This episode is brought to you by Bureau, our title sponsor. With 8 vibrant locations in Miami's best neighborhoods, Bureau is the perfect co-working place to work, network, and thrive alongside other entrepreneurs, creatives, professionals, and local businesses. Find your space at bureaumiami.com.
I grew up loving the Baltimore Colts and the Minnesota Vikings for some reason.
Why was that? What era was that? Was that like the Culpepper?
You're aging me, man. No, way back.
I was Randy Moss Culpepper, so that was my.
First of all,
And I'm not even a football guy, but
Ben,
like
Ben
you
is a
gotta
young
watch.
buck, so
you gotta watch that.
he's of another era.
Randy, you can't top Randy Moss. Randy Moss was the touchdown machine, but I'm going way back, and I grew up in the '70s. So I was born in '69. So I'm talking Fran Tarkenton, like the old school Vikes when they were at that time I think still playing in an outdoor stadium. I never been to it, and then they went into the dome.
The Metrodome.
The Metrodome, right?
Yeah.
But like in the '60s, the Packers used to still play. They still play at Lambeau Field. But the Vikings were also outside, and it would get 10 below.
Yep.
And everyone in the stands would be getting fucked up drinking just so they could sit in the stands.
Totally.
Otherwise you couldn't hang.
Totally.
So,
that's the Minnesota advantage. It didn't bother them. They're like, yeah, we're used to this shit.
That's right,
yeah.
man. That's right. Do you still go back? You have family?
I was just there last weekend. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's that movie? Fargo.
Yeah.
Isn't Fargo like?
Fargo's actually in North Dakota, but it's right on the border of Minnesota.
When you're talking that kind of cold, I guess it's all the same shit.
Yeah,
right?
sure, you betcha. Yeah.
I asked Ben why he didn't. Why doesn't he talk like that? His answer was like, I didn't fuck my sister.
Right on, man. That's Louisiana, man. Come on.
Also, shit gets weird out there in the sticks.
Fuck.
Now we're getting into the deliverance, man. Squeal like a pig.
Oh shit.
But you're a Miami guy, right?
No, I'm a New Yorker.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, just like all good New Yorkers end up
Good
down
for you.
here.
Well, you
right?
work in your Miami tan because you look more Miami than I do.
I've been down here 25 years, so half my lifetime here.
Yeah, you're
And
basically.
let's talk about this guy. He born in '69. This guy looks like a fucking stud still.
Yeah.
You're basically Cuban now, bro.
What are you taking, Tad? That you look.
It's my Cuban roots.
Is
man.
it your Cuban roots?
I still eat the black beans and rice. And I love my abuela, and it kept me.
It's all those marathons.
Kept me young at heart, man.
It's all those marathons.
The marathons. I wish I could still do them, man.
You're
got
Miami
old man
OG,
hips.
right?
What's that?
You were born and raised here.
Born and raised.
Yeah.
I was born in '69. I was born in North Miami Beach, and my old man's from New York. And I got to get it right here, huh? Right in the grill.
That's the real good part.
I'm gonna be spilling beer on this thing.
Hey, that's what it's meant for.
My pops is from New York,
What part?
the Bronx.
What's his story?
Hold on, wait, we're getting into this too deep.
Oh yeah,
Tad.
hold on, let's go.
We're at Bureau Central with Tadd Schwartz.
Yeah, let's-
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Let me get my beer, man. Right on. You know what? I had to keep it real. If I start drinking Cuba Libres at 3:00 in the afternoon, I'm going to be a hot mess
We'll
for
see
dinner.
how the first beer goes, because we got a full bar behind you if you
These
didn't
things-
notice that.
This is like aguardiente, man. Goes down nice and smooth. Old man beer. But yeah, so anyways, where was I? Yeah, my pops is a gringo from New York. My mom's Cuban from Havana, literally off the boat. And my old man, it's funny, growing up in the 70s and back in Miami, it was like no one wanted to admit they were Cuban. I grew up in North Miami Beach and then moved out later to Hialeah. But, different place back then. You were Cuban, it was like, it's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
And my old man used to make fun of me. He'd be like, "No, you're Cuban, bro." And I'm like, "How did you meet mom and stuff?" I'm American. I'm American. Mom's not from Cuba. He's like, "No, I was out fishing one day and tossed out my rod and caught your mom coming in on a raft, dude." Like that was like the un-PC joke back then. I was like, "Bro, and." But it was a different time back then. Miami was very white, very redneck. Out in the, you call it the sticks, but out in Hialeah it used to be very Jewish and very just white. Miami. Like Don Shula used to say, Miami.
Hialeah was Jewish?
Westchester was Jewish, but
Okay.
Hialeah was all white.
Yeah.
I moved out to Hialeah, I want to say when I was in 5th grade.
Okay.
Moved out. I lived in Miami Lakes, and I went to high school in Hialeah, Miami Lakes.
What brought your dad down to Miami?
Oh man, he was young. I think my dad. I mean, it was like the first New York migration back then, right? So I think, his parents, my grandfather was, he ran an apparel store up in New York, dealing with gangsters, in his family, they had some mafia ties and stuff. And he was like literally trying to run a store, and he had, bookies in his store all the time. And they wanted a better life, so they came down. And when my dad was like 6 or 7 years old and never looked back.
Oh, wow. So your dad came down here when he was young.
So they had a little house in North Miami Beach, which is still there today. I think they bought that house for like under $10,000, right behind 163rd Street Mall. Totally different area now. But, I drove by it, took my kids to go see it a couple years ago. And still.
That's the house you grew up in?
No, that was the house my dad grew up in. I grew up in North Miami Beach in right off 163rd Street too, so close to that. And then, like I said, when I was in 5th grade, we moved out to Miami Lakes, and spent all my time in Miami Lakes / Hialeah. So, which back then was very very white, off the map. But also, very Cuban. It was starting to, you're talking late 70s, early 80s, Miami really went through this whole metamorphosis where, you would see flags, last guy standing, take the flag. Yeah. Last American standing, take the flag, because all the Cubans were coming in, But, the way I grew up, it was, you didn't, it wasn't a, Miami was always diverse. It wasn't like such an issue like it is today. My friends were black, my friends were Cuban, my friends were white, and and that was and that's how public school was. That's how every community was. I never experienced racism and I'm a Jewish too. I'm a Jewish Cuban, so I'm a Cubano. But the first time I ever experienced racism was when I went out and started living in Miami Lakes, and I must have been like 10 or 11. And my buddy at the time, his parents had a place in Jupiter, Florida. And Jupiter was real redneck back then. We're talking 1980, 1981. So we drove up to Jupiter, and we're hanging out at the beach and all. And we went riding on his ATC. Me, him, and a couple buddies of his. And we're hanging out, and we're taking a little break. And one of his friends is like, "So y'all from Miami, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Miami." He's like, "Let me ask you a question. I'm 10, He's like, how do y'all live down there with all them spics and kikes?" I had never heard the word kike.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever heard the word spic. You're 10 years old. You don't hear that.
And you hit both of those.
And so I'm like, I don't know. I just do. Like, I thought it was like a rash or something, And I remember asking my friend later, I'm like, what's a spic and a kike? He goes, well, that's a Jew and that's a Cuban. I'm like, well, shit, that's me. You think about the first time that kind of resonates with you. And that's how the old South was. Miami was real racist back then, and you didn't really see it till you're old enough to understand, look, I'm a product of the diversity that is Miami today, Jewish, Cuban, and kind of, growing up in the environment that my school was very, it was blacks, it was whites, it was Cuban, it was, all the name calling, all that stuff was happening, the fights in the hallways. I mean, it was just par for the course, and in a very un-PC world. And I kind of look at it now, and where everything is so hyper politicized with social media and all this stuff, and, we're all sensitive about everything. You try to teach your kids, the real world is what we're living, and the real world is Miami, especially now with how diverse the city's become. Yeah.
More and more of our cities are not looking like Miami, but
New York is the same way,
right? But even like small town America is diversifying, right? It's
you would hope so. You would think so. A
lot of it is illegal immigrants, but it is, right. and they're kind of.
What's going on, Bilties? Ben and Felipe cutting back in, letting you guys know when you can come hang out at the next Cafecito Club.
That's right, Ben. We got the October 10th Cafecito Club at River Landing. Andy Hellinger is hosting us over there at Ficelli Bakery.
Or in Gringo Lee's Ficel
Bakery. Parking is free. and he's got the hookup on the parking too. Come hang out, meet some of our listeners. Our guests will be there as well, and we want to meet you guys too.
Yeah, it should be a cool venue right there on the river. These events have been awesome. We love hanging out, connecting people, talking deals. We already have some deals in the works from it, so it's a really fun way to hang out. So looking forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, so 9 a.m.-ish Miami Standard Time. We'll see you there on October 10th, and you can RSVP on our blog at builtworldadvisors.com.
See you guys there. Felipe and I are back with another new event. We got sick of getting over-caffeinated in the morning. We needed to balance it out with some cocktails.
We like other stimulants. It's just coffee.
Yeah, as you guys know, we're doing a little Built World After Hours event.
Our first Built World After Hours, and we got an amazing guest that we're doing a podcast with. Bob Knackle is going to be coming down from New York, and we're going to be interviewing him on the podcast. And so on October 20th, we're getting together around 5:30 p.m.-ish, again, Miami Standard Time at Miami Central. We're going to have cocktails with Bob, and we'd love to have some cocktails with our listeners and a bunch of our guests as well.
Yeah, we thought it'd be another cool way to do a compliment to the Cafecito Club that's been getting a lot of traction. Hang out, unwind, talk to Bob Knackle, the legend of New York City building sales, and we'll be at the Central Bar in the Miami Central. You can't miss us.
Yep, so we'll see you guys there October 20th. Looking forward to having a cocktail with some of our guests.
See you guys there. Cheers.
Later.
But to your point, I'm an illegal immigrant. I'm legal, but my mom came here.
Yeah.
You know, she's an immigrant. She's Cuban. You know, my mom. You know, all the Cubans here are immigrants.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not making this political, but you know, I look at myself as a product of an immigrant family.
I'm 100% the same thing. My parents came here,
and that's what made
I
this
mean, we all
country
are if you
great.
go far back enough,
Yeah.
right?
You
Unless
know?
you're Indian.
Right.
Native American, you mean?
Sorry.
Right. I mean,
I'm living in the 70s with Tadd right now.
taking y'all back, man. You know what? 70s was a great time to grow up.
It was.
The best music, right?
Best music, Dazed and Confused. All right. You know, I mean, you know, we got to bring some of that vibe back.
Absolutely.
To, you know, everyone's so damn sensitive today.
Regan really killed the music scene with the Schedule One, right? Like, we got to bring LSD back because, you know, you had Hendrix, you had the Eagle, everyone was going off,
yeah.
and then we went all crazy on the drug laws and all that music. Well, we got.
You know what? Hey, drugs and music. That's what makes music great.
Exactly.
You know, you get fucked up and you listen to great tunes, and you know, when you're not fucked up, it doesn't sound that good anymore. But whatever, you know, it's a good vibe.
So what did your dad do here in Miami? What was your mom's profession?
So my pops, he was always in the apparel business. So
Okay.
he, you know, started out. My dad, you know, didn't go to college. He ended up, you know, serving in the reserves and in the military during Vietnam, you know, and during that time he had hopped on with this company called Bobby Brooks, which was, you know, an apparel clothing manufacturer, a big brand, you know, and he was selling clothes across the country. And he kind of parlayed that into another job for it was a big brand called Lori's. They were kind of like I don't know, just a women's sports line. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you know, he became like one of the top producers, became vice president of Lori's, big job. Always traveling, you know, selling product all over the country. And then I would say in the late 70s, he ended up opening up his own business with my uncle, and they started their own manufacturing company.
Where were they manufacturing?
Clothes.
Where
Women's
though?
sportswear in Hialeah.
In Hialeah.
So they had a big warehouse in Hialeah that my grandfather had actually started. So my dad ended up going into business with my grandfather, his father-in-law, and his uncle. My dad was the sales guy. They were manufacturing. They kind of blended it together, and ran that for like 10 years, and you know had 10, 15 years, and really built up a really good business. And then you know that business kind of cratered, I would say, in the early 90s, you know, which kind of explains my dad's politics today. My dad always I think he was a Reagan Democrat, but, you know, when his business went under in the early 90s, you know, he kind of blamed it on global trade and NAFTA and all that. It became really hard for him to compete with the global economy, and that's kind of when his views started going Republican, while I was like a big Clinton guy going, you know, the other way, you know. So you can kind of see where
just after college, you know, we're a little more liberal when we're younger.
That's
always,
I mean,
always.
Hey, you know what? I keep the faith, man. I'm still pretty liberal. I mean, but at the same time, I'm also very open-minded, and You know,
be careful saying that in today's climate.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be open-minded and balanced.
Got to, man.
That may be considered hate speech, right?
Someone's got to keep the faith, man. You know, don't worry. I'll toss out the hate speech. Just not online anymore. I just do it face to face. But no, I'm more of a moderate. But yeah, I mean, so that was my dad's story. His business went under, and then but look, I learned a lot about.
Did you work in the business too? Did you help him
I would go in the summertime, and my job would be go into the back. It was this big warehouse with probably 75, 80 Cuban women that all were on their sewing machines, like just banging out apparel.
Do you know where the warehouse was?
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't on 30th Street.
I don't know.
It?
It was like in the heart of the industrial district in Hialeah.
Right.
You know, where you walk down the street and there was like a little venteria, and you'd get your little pan con bistec with those little French fries in the middle. You know, that kind of vibe. You know, and the guy would come by with not like the ice cream truck looking thing with the change machine and be doling out the change when you'd buy a little sandwich or your arroz con frijole and all that. That was kind of the vibe.
I asked because we were recently in a warehouse in Hialeah. It had 2 stories. It was a 2-story warehouse. On the second floor, it had like these low-hanging lights in long rows. It looked like a sewing setup. The whole thing was set up for like almost like a sewing sweatshop or something.
This was a sewing sweatshop. This was exactly that. And
maybe we were there.
You know, and it had like 2 big garage doors, and the product would come in, the product would come out. And my job would be to go in the back, and I would take the clothes, put plastic over it, pack it up in a box. UPS guy would come and like 3-4 times a day, just shipping stuff out all day. And I would do that every summer until I started going to like summer camp for a few years. And loved it, and that's kind of how I saw his business firsthand. And my abuelo would come in every day. My abuelo and abuela still, were partners in the business. My mom would work there. My uncle kind of ran the shop, and my dad did the sales.
You
all
speak
over the
Spanish?
country. Un poquito.
Yeah.
I can, a couple beers, I'll start busting it out.
All right.
But that was the problem. Like my grandparents lived in Westchester. When they came from Cuba in 59, they bought a house and lived in Westchester their whole lives for 40 years. No one in that community spoke English.
Yeah.
And they never spoke English to me. So the only Spanish I know was speaking and conversing with my abuelo and abuela.
Yeah.
So, and I grew up, as a kid, just knowing words like uva was grape, but I never knew what grape was. Agua was water, like stuff like that. Un puñetazo,
you even got the
he's got
Cuban accent.
The accent, exactly.
Yeah, you do.
And I can bullshit my way till I need to get serious,
So, what did you like doing in high school? What was your favorite subjects?
Well, look, and I'll kind of segue from that. What I learned from my pop, who was really my mentor in getting into business. I saw his business go down, and he did what he had to do to, keep the family going. He went from running his own shop to being a salesman in Macy's.
Yeah.
And ended up after that taking a job at a funeral home, selling plots, but making money.
Yeah.
And doing whatever he had to do to put money on the table.
Yeah.
And I come back from college and he's got no business. I'm like, what's going on? And so when I started my business, that was in early 90s. I started my business in 2005, 20 years this year. I always had it in the back of my mind, I can take this business as far as I can, and keep going with the sky's the limit mentality. But, right around the corner could be the Grim Reaper. Right around the corner, you could be out of business. You can go from one year, your best year, and next year, your worst year, and you're done.
Yeah.
And that paranoia to this day still drives me, knowing that no matter how well you're doing and how high you get or, how big your business gets, it could all come down if you don't keep churning, if you don't keep that chip on your shoulder, you don't keep that little sense of fear. I mean, you guys know you're running your own shop, know? So, having said all that, I mean, I care. What was your question?
Growing up, I mean, what subjects did you like? What were you into?
Look, man, I was, I was like a Spicoli,
Yeah.
I was really good.
Explain Spicoli, because I think a lot of people that are listening to this do not know what Spicoli is.
That was my skull. I'm so way. That's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Cameron Crowe, Mr. Hahn, I don't know.
Were you a good student, Tadd, or not really?
I was a good enough student to get into UF.
I mean,
So
UF was a lot easier to, let's be honest, UF was a lot easier to get into than it is today.
So I'll tell you a little story about UF. So my dad didn't go to college, but my Aunt Jill, my dad's sister, was a straight A student at UF back in the late 60s, early 70s. So I was a good student up until I'd say about 10th, 11th grade, and I was a C student. But I wanted to go to college, so I took the SAT. Back then the SAT was how you got into college, you know? I mean, you had decent enough grades, C's and B's, mainly C's, and come back and I have a great score, 890, 890. That's, even back then that was low, So I went back, studied, took it again. 940, making progress.
Moving up,
right direction.
Dude, you need a 1600 just to even be considered for UF
crazy.
today.
Yeah.
It's the Harvard of the South, whatever, But my aunt wrote a letter for me, and snuck me into summer B, and that's how I ended up getting into UF. I started on probation. And, I skated through college, and I ended up doing...
Ben, you know what they say in real estate, if people don't know you, they're not doing business with you.
Exactly. That's why the Built World podcast works with top-of-mind public relations, because being a best-kept secret sure doesn't pay the bills.
Paula Uspa Abbott, the brains behind Top of Mind PR, is a former real estate journalist, so she knows exactly what makes the media pay attention.
And let's be real, getting in the press isn't just about bragging rights. It's about building credibility, landing deals, and making sure the right people know your name.
Whether it's top-tier media coverage, killer storytelling, or just making sure you're the one people think of first, Top of Mind PR has you covered.
Want to stand out? Hit up topofmind-pr.com or email info@topofmind-pr.com.
Because in real estate, if you're not visible, you're invisible. Ben, you and I are all about PropTech, and if there's one tool we absolutely cannot live without for our commercial real estate brokerage business, it's Vizda.
Absolutely. Vizda is incredible. We use it every single day, and we're always wondering, how do they do this? Every evening we get an email from them with real-time closed transactions. No more waiting around for months for the property appraiser to finally update.
Yeah, whether you're doing industrial, retail, office, land deals, they have every closed transaction. And it's not just the speed, Ben. The details are on point. Seller and buyer info, contact details, phone numbers, emails, everything is accurate.
It's hands down our top prospecting tool to farm for warehouse deals in Hialeah. Vizda keeps us one step ahead always. It's also the best way to search for comps when putting together opinions of values for clients.
Head on over to Vizda.com and use code BuiltWorld and get 30 days free access today. VIZZDA.com. And just to talk about that a little bit too, because if there's some young people listening here, like there are ways to get into schools like Gainesville or Cornell. Like I had a friend of mine that he wanted to go to Cornell. And so what he did is he went to the community college that was right in Ithaca. Did 3 years there, I believe, transferred to Cornell because there was reciprocity, and then graduated with a Cornell degree. So, whether it's going like taking summer schools or going part-time, like there are ways to get into the schools that you want. You just have to prove yourself a little bit more after high school.
That's exactly right. And look, my take on college is this. I wasn't one of those people, and all credit to people who go for different reasons. I could care less about going to college and building a network so that I'm going to get teed up for a job after. I mean, I went to college to do a couple things, get out of the house, have fun, party, drink,
Other stuff, but we won't talk about that.
Meet chicks, all that stuff, and live the experience and get a degree so that you can then figure out what you want to do. I had no plan. I ended up studying communications because, quite frankly, that was the only school after your first 2 years that I was really qualified for and could get into. And it turned out great because, as you see what I'm doing right now, I talk for a living.
Yeah.
And public speaking and some people would call it bullshitting, but, I call it, selling, and I call it storytelling, and I call it connecting with people face to face. And, communications was naturally suited for me. And that became my major at UF.
Were you a pretty social guy in high school?
Yeah, I mean,
Any sports?
yes. In high school, I did tennis and football.
Okay.
So I was the guy in the football team where I played football through right up through my senior year.
You're a punter?
No, man, I appreciate. I'm not gonna forget that day. And I know I'm a lean, mean 150. See this thing? I could toss the ball. I still got the rocket.
Yeah, you were a QB?
I was a QB.
Holy
man.
shit!
I
Look
mean,
at that.
I started JV when I was in 9th and 10th grade, and then I rode the pine when I was too small, and when I was in 11th grade. But I was on a great team, and we had. But put it this way: the starting quarterback at HML was 190, 200, and I'm rolling in at $155, but being on the football team taught me a lot, what I tell this to my son who's a big baseball player, where I really toughened up and built a lot of pride was I ran the scout team against the first team defense. So my job was I was second string quarterback, and I would quarterback the scout team that would prepare the first team D for the team we were playing. So I'm running the read option and getting fucking lit up by the defensive end who didn't care if I was going to, toss the ball to the back and fake to go, off the tight end. He was just going to lay me out. And I'd get laid out 4, 5, 6 times in a row. And I still had to keep getting back up and then doing the pop pass and then dropping back and get sacked 14 times in practice. Man, you do that, the games are easy.
Yeah.
The games are nothing, man. Getting beat up like that in football, you're getting up seeing stars. And I did that for 2 years on the varsity team. And to me, that was more valuable than actually playing in the games. I mean, like the games, you get to sit on the sidelines. I look good in my uniform, and you're waving up to the stands, whatever. I'm not getting dirty, but in the practice, I played tough. And back then, we're talking early 80s, mid 80s, doing 2-a-day practices out in the 95-degree weather. I'm in LA half the time. My son's playing baseball and 75, 65-degree weather.
I mean,
I'm like, dude,
that's why they're a little softer in LA than they are here in Miami.
They're very soft
right?
in LA, man. They're very soft in LA. But so that experience, sports to me got me through a lot of it. Got me through high school. High school.
And so you were a tennis player as well.
Yeah, and if I would have kept it up, I'd be a really good tennis player today.
You ever play any beach tennis?
Depends what kind of beach tennis we're talking
No,
about.
it's like a real
like Kadima.
No. This is like
Pedal on the beach.
It's got nets and everything on it. It's 2-on-2.
But if you can drink a beer while you're playing, then I'll jump right in.
That's the vibe right there. Seriously, it's music, it's beers, it's beach
My favorite
tennis.
sports today or whatever you can knock a beer back during intermission and keep playing, like pickleball. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I still play a lot of tennis because my daughter's a big tennis player. So she kind of revived my tennis career. I taught her how to play tennis during COVID.
How old is she?
So my daughter's 13, going on 14, and next month, and my son just turned 11.
Cool.
So sports is like they've both been doing sports for the past 4, 5, 6 years, and it's become their life. And that's really one of the big things I got out of high school. And so anyways. Yeah. So coming at it, you got to keep me on track, or we'll just start going on tangents, man.
We're good at that.
But yeah, coming out of college, I didn't know, I didn't have a career path. I was just looking, hey, I want to get a degree, and then.
But you did. You graduated.
Graduated from UF.
How'd you do in college? Same C average.
Yeah, I got through with C's and B's.
Yeah.
I had the running joke with my education was, I'm like, what? I'm a good writer. I always loved writing. I read a lot of Hemingway, Kerouac, all that fun stuff. Just recently went back and read The Great Gatsby. I always loved Fitzgerald, the classic stuff, and love creative writing. So I'm like, what? I'm gonna be a writer when I get to college. But I never learned how to type. Yeah. And I literally never learned how to type in college.
Well, when you graduated, they were still on the typewriter.
We were on like dude, you're making 92. It's funny, man.
I remember taking typing classes on a typewriter in high school in like 91.
It was they had those electronic typewriters too, but you still had to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember watching my mom when at work. My mom wrote everything, and she had whiteout and stuff. My first boss, Phyllis Apple, had whiteout. She still worked. We'll get to that in a little bit. But my first boss was in her 70s, And she had all her pitches. She would type them all out. And I would have to go back and white that stuff out before she'd mail it up and send stuff to reporters or fax it. I mean, we're talking mid-90s. It was still old school like that because computers and email was just starting to come up, But, you think about it, what a great thing to learn, to actually work that way and experience all that emerging technology, and have to do things the old way. Like if you wanted to connect with someone, actually pick up the phone, or there's no email and text.
Yeah.
And, the kids today that work at my firm, I mean, they don't leave voicemail, they don't call, they text, and that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as they get the job done, I don't care. But it's just I'm still leaving 2-minute voicemails. Yeah. That people just don't even listen to.
No one's listening.
I was
to
the
this.
king of voicemail, man. Anyways, so I got out of college and was kind of clueless, and I came back home and from Gainesville. My parents were living in Miami. And I started waiting tables. Had no idea what I was going to do.
Where were you waiting tables?
There was this health food store that opened a restaurant called the Unicorn Village. It was in Aventura. My parents at the time were living in North Miami Beach. So I worked there, and then I got a job at another restaurant at Aventura Mall, and it was fun, man. I was just, for a year of my life, I got stuck on a chick that was waiting tables with me, and I had like no direction. I was just going to hang out, wait tables, and figure stuff out.
Floating.
Whenever it kind of happened for me, and my parents were busy trying to, do their thing, and, I was kind of just skating by, looking into classifieds, maybe I'll get a job, whatever. And then one day I got a call from my best friend at the time, who's still my best friend. He's actually coming into town tomorrow night, and we're hanging out on the beach. This kid Joe, and he graduated with me from UF, and he had moved out to Colorado, and he was a bellhop in Vail, and like living a great year after college life, skiing
life
during the day,
yeah.
Just having fun up in Vail, Colorado. How can you not, right? So, he showed up at my house in Miami, and he's like, dude, it's time for me to get serious, and you're waiting tables, time for you to get serious. He's like, I just got hired by Senator Bob Graham for a job in the mailroom up in Washington, D.C. You remember? I don't know if you guys remember Bob Graham.
Absolutely.
The Graham family was legendary down here, and Graham was one of, probably to this day, in my opinion, the best governor we've ever had. He was a senator, and he's like, dude, I'm moving to D.C. Why don't you think about it? So he moved up there, and like 4 or 5 months later, he called me. He's like, look, man, there's an opening in the mailroom for Senator Bob Graham's office. Why don't you come on up? And I'm like, we'll see. Finally, after a little convincing, I literally packed up all my shit, put it on a train. I took a train from Miami to D.C. in like May of 93, and moved all my stuff up there, living with him in like 10 blocks east of the Capitol, which wasn't a great area back then. A lot of crime, saw a lot of stabbings, just, a hot area of downtown DC on the hill. And I was looking for a job, did not want to work for the senator because I wanted to do it on my own, and couldn't get hired, couldn't get a job up there. And finally ended up taking a job with Bob Graham. And I worked in the mailroom there for like 2 years, and that kind of put me on my way. I worked up there for about 4 years. And my last year, I started working in the press office and was helping out, with interviews.
When you say you're working in the mailroom, what are you doing? You're opening mail and reading mail?
It was funny. I mean, it was a whole operation. Graham's staff, he was in the Hart Senate building. And he probably had about 40 people on staff. And I'd say 32 of them were all under the age of 28. I was 23, 24 at the time. You had your staff assistants, which is what I was, and mailroom, answer the phones, do just, bottom of the barrel work. Then you had your legislative correspondence, and these were the guys that would like write correspondence and write letters for the senator to constituents, you know, kind of waxing poetic on the issues he supports and whatnot. Back then, the big issue with Clinton had just come into the office. So I don't know if you remember gays in the military, you know, NAFTA, you know, like the big issues and where Graham stood on those issues. And, you know, if you were working the phones, literally, you'd get into the office at 8:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 at night. When you finish the phones, you pick up the phone, Senator Bob Graham's office. You tell that fucking Senator Bob Graham, if he supports that gays in the military by that bullshit about Bill Clinton, you know, like, we are never voting for him again, like stuff like that all day.
And people would be calling all day long, like constituents all day long would be calling?
All day long. And so imagine that
Jesus.
Amplified by 100 with the mail. So we would get correspondence, and you'd have to go through each letter. And then you had like these, in the mailroom, you had a TV that C-SPAN was on all day. And then you had like 20 little shelves. It was like cubbies, you know, and you would sort through the mail and open up the mail. And there's 3 dudes in the mailroom. And depending on what issue it was, immigration, you know, arts and, you know, arts, foreign, Graham was on the Foreign Relations Committee. So anything foreign relations would go in this bucket, you know, immigration, you know, economy, whatever. There's 20 issues. And we'd sort through mail. And then the LCs would then respond to it. And it was a huge operation because that's, you know, part of, people don't realize that how the senators make the sausage is, you know, they advocate for certain issues based on what their constituents are really feeding them on. You know, and the issues in Florida were immigration way back then, you know, very anti-Clinton, you know, so Clinton was a lightning rod when he came into office. And Graham was one of his biggest supporters. So Graham took a lot of heat those first 2 years. But for me, that was my job, you know, and I would come in and, you know, it was a growing up period for me because I went from literally, you know, getting out of college, thinking one day I'll get a job. And now I'm like feeling like, I felt good, you know. You're number one, you're in DC, going from Miami, where, you know, I was just a kid growing up in Miami without really any business-minded focus, you know, outside of watching my dad and mom work their asses off, you know. And now I'm in the power mecca of the world, jogging at night down the mall, you know.
Is that when your running obsession started?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, I would wake up in the morning and run from my house to the Capitol, which was right next to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Washington, all the way to the Lincoln, and back, and then climb up the Capitol stairs like Rocky, and turn around. And, you know, dude, what a great way to greet the day, right? You know, and I did that every day, and I, you know, I started doing marathons after that, and it's a great way to see DC. You know, I used to run from my house into Georgia. I run 15 miles all the way into the heart of Georgetown.
Moving faster than the guys with the knives.
Bobbing and weaving, baby. You got to stick and move, dude. Stick and move. So anyways, I kind of grew up in DC. Yeah. You know, DC taught me, hey, man, you know what? I got to get up. I got to put a shirt and tie on. I got to walk to work. I got to be there. I had responsibility.
That's some adult shit.
Yeah. Some adult shit. Even though I was getting paid, I think my first salary there was $13,500. Wow. $13,500 living with my buddy, splitting rent, you know, eating chips and salsa for dinner, you know, maxing out your credit card. I probably had like a $2,500 limit, you know, and just living, you know, and that kind of teaches you, you know, you kind of learn that way. And you know, I'm doing this on my own. You know, my parents can't help me. They're, you know, they're just getting by down in Miami, you know, and I had to do it.
You have any brothers or sisters?
I have a little sister who's not so little anymore. My sister's 41. She's got 2 twin, beautiful children, Sydney and Jalen. And she actually works at my firm. She's been at my firm, Tadd Schwartz, Grant. She's been at my firm for almost 15 years now. So she's you know, and that worked out great because there's nobody I trust more. And, you know, but yeah, she's 14 years younger than me. Yeah. So, you know, she was a kid when I was doing all that stuff. Yeah. So, you know, then after that, I came back to Miami, you know,
So you leave Washington, do you come back to Miami? Is there a job lined up for you already? Or you're like, I'm done with DC, I'm going to go figure it out in Miami?
At nothing, man. This is, you know, I basically was like, look, if I stay in DC, I'm going to need to get a law degree, or become a lobbyist. And, that wasn't in the cards for me.
And how old were you when you left DC?
I was probably like 26.
And what year was that?
96.
96.
96.
So 96, you're back in Miami.
So 96, I'm back in Miami. And
this is when your communications career starts, huh?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. So, I walk out of DC with, you know what? I like the media stuff. I like the press. I was doing a lot of that with Graham, and I had that politics vibe in me, and I was, very idealistic, as you should be at that age, and still am, but, very, ready to tackle the world. And I come back here, and the only job I could get, a buddy of mine from Graham's office hooked me up with a job selling stocks at Prudential. Oof, which was about, you ever see that movie Boiler Room?
Oh yeah.
I was in the fucking boiler room.
Glengarry Glen Ross.
I was Glengarry Glen Ross. I was selling C leads, not B, definitely not A. Dude, I was literally chained to the desk and given like a stack of cards. And my job was to pick up the phone, which was great because, it's kind of like anything, you're programmed to hear no, hang up. My job was to get the person I was calling off this Dun & Bradstreet card on the phone with my boss so he could talk to them and try to get a lead. And I would call 250 people a day, 200 a day, and maybe get 2 or 3 over to my boss all day, every day, until I took the Series 7 and then could start learning my trade, reading the Wall Street Journal. Dude, I only read the sports page back then. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured this is a great way to start a career. My dad was all gung-ho, even though he knew this just wasn't in the cards for me. I could sell, but I could sell stories. I can't sell stock.
Yeah.
I don't know enough. I follow the stock market today because I'm invested, but I still don't. That's not in my DNA. I was, reading something in the Wall Street Journal back then, and I would pitch that all day until finally someone said, all right, I'll speak to Danny Tanliff. And that was a hero. I got him on the phone. I can go to lunch now. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. I can go to lunch. So, funny story with all that. So I do that for 6 months. And the goal there is you need to put your time in where your bosses are like, okay, you put your time in. This guy is learning to trade. We're going to send him up to Boca where he's going to meet the top boss at Prudential. And we're going to pay for you to take your Series 7 and, then you're going to become a broker and get on your way, So I'm studying and, preparing for the interview. And I had to basically go up there and tell them, why I wanted to make money, why I wanted to be a stockbroker. And they, the bosses in Miami were like, look, man, we send 3 candidates up there, every quarter. No one fails this. You're going to do just fine. We can't wait to have you at this firm. But you got to go pass the interview and then come back, and then we'll pay for you to take your Series 7. So I remember going out and bought a double-breasted suit like David Letterman, This is 96. And I cruise up to Boca, and I sit down with this lady, real corporate. She's like, why do you want to be a stockbroker and all that? And I'm like, well, I saw the movie Wall Street in 1987, and I love Bud Fox, and I'm quoting Glengarry Glen Ross, coffees for closers. I mean, man, this is fucking it, man. I want this profession, and I'm talking shit. And I come into the office the next day thinking I nailed this interview. And my boss had sat me down. They took me to breakfast. And one of my bosses really liked me. When he first hired me, he's like, man, you'd be great with my daughter. I wanted to hook me up with his daughter. And we just always connected. I'm a big Doors fan. This guy loved the Doors. And we would just go to lunch together. He just really wanted me to work at the firm. But I think deep down, he just knew I wasn't qualified to be a stockbroker. And they sat me down over breakfast. And I'm like, well, what's the next steps? And he goes, look, man, I just want to level with you. We send a lot of people up to her. And we talked to Barbara this morning, and she said, out of all the candidates he sent me, I'm like, yeah, Tadd could have been the worst candidate we've ever interviewed. This ain't the job for you, buddy. And I was like, fuck.
That's hilarious.
So anyways, long story short, being a stockbroker wasn't in the cards. And
so you got canned.
So I got canned. And
do you ever take the Series 7 now?
So I never had to take the Serious 7, thank God, because math is to this day my worst subject. My daughter's in 8th grade and I can't help her with her math homework. She's doing algebra. I forgot all that shit.
I think we all did.
You know, but you know what, man, I can write a mean creative writing letter and I help her with all her English. So I have some value in the house. But so what it turned out, you know what, man, when times get tough, go talk to your mom, you know. And my mom was working for a developer at the time by the name of Joe Milton. Big developer. His dad, Joseph Milton, to this day, his dad recently passed away, but they're one of the biggest multifamily developers in Miami-Dade County.
I live next door to one of their developments.
Which one?
The one on 39th Street where the Domino Park is. It's actually the Jose Milton Park.
Yeah, Jose Milton.
I live right up the street from there.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, so Jose Milton was a legend, you know, and you know, very politically connected and whatnot, very close with Diaz Ballard family. And so my mom worked for the son, Joe Milton, who was building condos on Sunny Isles Beach at the time, Sands Point and Pinnacle. And she was basically the office manager. And she's like, look, you studied communications, you have a political background. Why don't I get you an interview with Phyllis Apple? Phyllis Apple at the time was the largest real estate PR firm in Miami. And this is mid-90s. She had everybody. Ugo Colombo, George Perez, Donnie Sofer. Trying to think of the big names back then. Anybody who was doing real estate, Jules Trump, not Donald Trump, but Jules Trump, who's one of the biggest developers down here. Anyway, so she hooked me up with an interview with Phyllis Apple. And Phyllis loves me and hires me. Phyllis Apple at the time was 69, 70 years old, maybe 75. You know, she had a just tremendous career. She had been married like 4 or 5 times, and after her last husband, he's like, I'm done with men. I need to do something on my own. And she started doing events, and that kind of got parlayed into, you know, she hit Miami at the right time, late 80s, when the condo boom started really blowing up.
We got that cocaine money building buildings.
Well, we'll talk about that. You know, Brickell Avenue was built on the cocaine trade, just like Scarface wasn't a joke. And she was doing she got hired to do condo developers. I think her first big condo was Oceania, which was like 4 condos on Sunny Isles Beach. Anyways, she's doing the Miltons. So she hires me, and it's me and 10 girls in that office.
Holy shit.
And
you're like, this is the fucking job for me. I've hit the lottery.
Hit the fucking lottery. It was, I mean, in many ways, it was great. But, you know, it was tough because I had a you know, I talk a lot about Phyllis, and I stayed close with her throughout. She just died 2 years ago. She lived to be 101 years old.
Oh, wow.
And she was my greatest mentor, you know, and I talk about her all the time with my staff today. You know, she sat me right in front of her. You know, she had a little office right next to Beverly Hills Cafe and off West Dixie Highway in North Miami Beach. There used to be, I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but it's that area is all changed now, but we're kind of close to Aventura.
Yeah.
And I actually grew up, I was born in a apartment, you know, project, like right down the street from there, right next to Reynolds Park. So it was like in a little house, you know, we're all packed in there, you know, and basically my job was to, you know, I had 7 clients. You know, Ugo was one of them. Ugo's my client today.
Yeah.
But Ugo was my first big client, and Phyllis had put Ugo on the map, and Ugo put Phyllis on the map when he did Bristol Tower, when he did Santa Maria. You know, Phyllis got him on the cover of New York Times, Wall Street Journal. I mean, this is when Miami was just a little podunk town, you know, before the condo boom, and Ugo kind of brought that to life in the early 90s. Anyways, you know, Phyllis hires me, and I had to pitch media all day. And I was, you know, she would listen to me, Taddy, you're not on the phone. I don't hear the phone. I don't hear you talking. And I'm like, you know, I'm like pitching media. I'm the only one in that office pitching. The girls weren't pitching. They were, you know, sending faxes. And, you know, this is 1996, 1997, 97.
And what is pitching media like? What is that? You're just cold calling developers?
So, I mean, back then it was hard. There's no email.
You're cold calling like the New York Times.
So I was cold calling
Miami
everyone from Miami Herald. Miami Herald was the biggest show in town back then, you know. Miami Today.
Oh, on
South
behalf of
Florida
the clients,
Business Journal.
you're calling
Yeah,
editorials.
so you know what? Hey,
and,
I got a great story. I got a project in Sunny Isles Beach that's going up. They've got 60% sales. They're all to Latin Americans. You should do a story on, you know, the Colombian influx into Miami and how we're starting to see more buyers infiltrate Sunny Isles Beach. And we had another condo that was all Russian. So you come up with creative angles,
Sure.
which is what I do all day today to this day. You know, come up with creative storytelling and then try to get the media interested. And that's pitching media, you know, same way you guys are pitching, you know, to take on a listing.
Yep.
You know, I remember, you know, Phyllis was tough, man. Phyllis was the kind of boss where if she didn't see results out of the gate in 2 weeks, you were gone. So after a month there, Phyllis takes me to lunch. I'll never forget. She takes me to lunch with one of our clients who's a big time real estate agent. And she listens to this podcast, she'll laugh. Her name is Dora Puig.
Oh, yeah?
Dora's the
Dora's
best.
a beast.
Dora's the best in the business. But you ask Dora about Phyllis and she'll rave. I mean,
Yeah.
Phyllis also put Dora on the map. Dora at the time was doing the sales for Santa Maria, which at the time was the, you know, tallest condo to rise in Miami, south of New York, 54 stories.
Such a sick
in the
building.
sky.
To this day, I think it's such a sick building.
To this day, it is probably one of the top 10 luxury buildings in the country, if not the world. It's beautiful. Ugo spent more money than he would ever spend on anything today in building that building. And Bristol Tower too. Bristol Tower, both those buildings are monuments to the skyline. Anyways, she took me to lunch and she fired me. And she was like, look, you're cute, you're sweet, like you, but you just can't get it done.
Love you, bye.
I need someone that could, love you, bye. You know, and she had to be delicate because my mom was working for her client.
So this was
you know?
after a month you got canned?
After a month, you know, and I remember this was on. Sometimes I get choked up when I tell this story. I'm gonna have a sip of beer. So, anyways, I go home, and I'm fucking devastated, man. I'm like, you know what? I come down from DC. I can't cut it as a stockbroker. My mom hooks me up with a job with this PR maven who's got all these great clients. And she fires me out of the blue, you know, and I go home and I tell my parents, I tell my dad. And me and my dad go for a walk around the golf course. My parents lived in Aventura at the time, around a circle in a little townhouse. And I'm like, Pop, man, I got fired, you know. And I to explain why, and I'm crying. Like, I'm 26 years old, and I'm like tearing up crying. And we go back, and you know, he didn't really say anything. He's just like, hey, you know what? You'll find your way. You'll find your way. And then he comes in before I go to bed that night, and he goes, look, I got some advice for you. You do what you want, but I recommend that you show up at Phyllis's office tomorrow, because she said, look, you're done. I'll pay you for the rest of the week. You don't have to come back. Show up tomorrow, and tell her you want to finish out the week. And show her that you care, you know, and I think it'll go a long way. And I did. I went there the next morning. I knew that every Tuesday, Phyllis would get her hair done in the beauty salon next door. I go into the fucking beauty salon. I go, Phyllis, I know you fired me. I just want to finish out the week, you know, and all the guys that were in there were like, let him finish out the week, you know. So she let me finish out the week. And one of my big clients, thank God for him, and he probably would laugh if he heard this story. One of my big clients was Manny Medina. You know who Manny Medina? You know Manny Medina.
Yeah.
Manny Medina, who later on his company was Terramark, but
Yep.
before he became the Napa of the Americas and this tech,
Emerge Americas.
baron, he was a real estate guy, you know, and he built a couple big projects in the Grove. He built Fortune House in downtown Miami. But he was phenomenal with real estate, and he had many ups and downs. Anyways, I had that Friday, I had been pitching a story on Manny Medina in his condo for weeks. Finally, that story hits on Friday. Great fucking timing, you know. And front page of El Nuevo Herald. I got him a big story in El Nuevo Herald on the rebirth of the luxury real estate in the Grove, something like that. I think I still got the clip at home. And one of the girls goes into Phyllis's office and goes, look, Tadd's the only guy that's pitching media. You fired him because you don't hear him on the phone enough and whatever. They all lobbied for me. So she hired me back.
Oh, wow.
And within 2-3 months, I was like the golden boy of that office.
Dang.
I was
Saved by the bell by the Nuevo
Saved
Herald.
by the bell. And that like taught me, you know, that that's all I needed, man. You know, once I had that like mojo, you know, to do the job.
The confidence,
Yeah, you know, it's like with anything, you know, I had the momentum and I started taking on clients. I would go on business meetings with Phyllis, help her pitch business. You know, I'd help her put together like, you know, board presentations, you know, all that stuff. And I had no fear, man. I would go sit in Phyllis's office. I would watch her close New York Times, watch her close Wall Street Journal, watch her just pitch anyone. She didn't care. And she just was charming. She'd call editors sweetheart. She was like old school, you know, cussed like a, you know, like a fucking truck driver. She didn't care.
Our type of woman.
Absolutely.
But a classy.
Yeah.
I mean, she represented everybody in town, you know, and she was a big golfer and she dressed to the nines, jewelry, and for a 70-year-old woman, beautiful woman, you know, just she owned a room, you know, and really cut her teeth at a time when, you know, there weren't. I mean, in PR there were women, but in business and all her clients were men. I mean, she was. You know, but she put everybody on the map. She put Ugo on the map. She put Suzanne Summers on the map down here when Suzanne Summers. She had like every celebrity that was doing anything in Miami, she represented.
Wow.
You know, so.
And what advice from Pop?
What advice from Pop,
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
You know, and my mom opened the door. So, you know, look, my family played a big part in me just getting started, you know, and you know, that I'm very appreciative of that. You know, and the hardest thing you learn as you're coming up as a kid is you think you can do it on your own. You know, you don't want help from anyone. I can do it by myself. My kids say that today. I can do it by myself. All right. You know, but you realize you got to like eat your humble pie sometimes. You got to ask for fucking help. And one of the things I've learned in my career, and I learned this from that experience, and I read, I think it was whenever it came out, you know, 2011, the Steve Jobs book. I highly recommend everybody read that. But he gave advice. He's like, look, if you want anything from anyone in life, whether it's the CEO of Intel or, you know, a manager or a client or whatever, just pick up the phone and ask them. And he's like, 9 times out of 10, they will never say no. People want to know that they can help you, you know? And if you just ask people, hey, I need a favor, I need this, I want to learn how you did this, can I take you to lunch, whatever, you know? Some of my best meetings and learning and growth opportunities in my business is going and sitting down over lunch with a client, a lawyer, a developer, a banker who's been in this business or in life. You know, these guys are 60, 70, 80 years old, and just shooting the shit and asking them questions and learning how they built their business, how they balance their time between business and family and raising a family. And one of my closest clients who I love dearly just passed away. His name was Bob Josephberg, probably one of the best white-collar defense attorneys in Miami history. He represented Jim Morrison back in '69 when Jim Morrison at Dinner Key dropped his pants and, you know, did his thing on stage. You know that story, obviously, yeah. Right? And he was his defense attorney way back then. Jim Morrison he got off on a bunch of charges, but got convicted. But, you know, first time I sat down with Bob Josephberg, we were shooting a shit, and somehow music came up. He's like, hey, check this out. And he like tossed me a book of poetry that Jim Morrison wrote and signed for him.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, dude, you realize only 6 of these in the world exist, you know, like signed by Jim Morrison. I mean, it's really cool. So, and Bob just went on to represent everybody. He's to this day. I mean, he a legend. And, you know, I remember going to lunch with him a few times and him just, you know, just a great, down-to-earth, plain-spoken guy who everyone loved, you know, and just learning and learning from those kind of people. And I've been fortunate in building my business with my team, you know, to really represent some interesting people who have, both men and women, who have, you know, great stories and great lessons to teach, and always very giving and willing of their time. And, you know, I see how you guys are doing it with this, all the interesting
exactly
people you meet.
This. Yeah.
I mean, look at all the characters that come in,
yeah.
You know? I mean, to me, the blessing of doing PR is the people you get to work with, you know, and we've built our business to the point now where we get to work with clients that we want to work with. I'm not out there sharpening my spear, just trying to hunt to bring in money. We're looking to work with best in class law firms, development firms, brokerage firms, banks, accounting, consumer, you name it. but best in class, and people that we like and respect and are going to move the needle. And, and along the way, you kind of you just learn different things and really the qualities of life, and, that's after doing this on my own and building a firm with my partners for 20 years, you look back and you're like, holy shit, we've really come a long way as Miami's kind of grown up, and we're kind of telling that story now to celebrate our 20th year anniversary. Not that I'm plugging that, but I am. So,
Felipe, ever since we moved into Bureau, my productivity has been through the roof. I might actually be getting things done for once.
The energy at Bureau just makes work fun. Plus, with 8 locations across South Florida, from South Miami all the way to Hollywood, there's no excuse for not finding a spot to get your shit done, Ben.
And we're not alone. Over 500 local companies call Bureau home. Everything from creative agencies and real estate firms to tech startups, law firms, and media companies. It's a melting pot of brilliant people, and we don't include ourselves in that category.
We definitely don't include ourselves in that category. Bureau really has space for anyone, whether you're flying solo or have a team. There are suites starting at 100 square feet all the way up to 2,000 square feet. They also don't try to lock you into long-term agreements, and everything is month to month.
Let's not forget the important stuff either. The coffee is top tier, staff is incredible, and has a very entrepreneurial vibe. It's not just a workspace, it's a place where work actually gets done.
That's right, Ben. So if you want to level up your workday like we try to do every day, check out Bureau. You might even catch us sipping some espressos between podcast sessions.
Or tequila.
Definitely tequila.
Tell Bureau the Built World sent you, and you'll get 50% off your first month's membership. See you out there. Cheers.
Later.
If your Instagram is collecting dust, so are your leads.
That's why we started working with Sage Marketing, and I gotta say, they're dialed in, Ben.
Yeah, they'll build out your content, help you with your brand voice, and even create custom reels for you. Stuff that looks good, authentic, and performs.
Whether you just need strategy, someone to train your team, or you're ready to hand it all over, Sage has packages for whatever level you're at.
And the best part, you can book a free 15-minute discovery call. No pressure, just a quick call to see where you're at and how they can help.
Hit up socialmedia.sage on Instagram or check the show notes for the link. If you're serious about growing your brand this year, this is the move.
So how long were you with Phyllis for? How long were you at?
So I was with Phyllis from 97 to 99. 3 years.
Yeah, not that long. Okay.
Yeah, but look, an impactful 3 years.
It's like, you were thrown into the fire. Like, just go and get it.
And look, it got to the point where, to fast forward, all I was doing was real estate. And to this day, real estate is probably, almost 60% of our practice. It drives the economy, residential and commercial, and even law. Represent the biggest. Pills and Sunbrook has the biggest real estate practice in the state, so we do a lot of real estate. But I didn't want to be a one-trick pony, right? I wanted to go get experience and learn how to do corporate. I wanted to learn how to pitch business the right way. I wanted to grow, and I told Phyllis I was leaving, and she was fucking pissed. And,
Was your at this point, are you thinking that I'm eventually going to go off on my own, look,
I had only been doing it for 4 years, and I knew I needed to build a network. I needed to do more things. I was a big fish in a little pond at Phyllis, and then I went to RBB, which was Christine Barney and Bruce Rubin, and at the time they were called Weber Shandwick until they bought their firm back and branded it RBB, and I went from a 10-person shop with about 40 clients to an 80-person shop with over 100 clients, and national clients, and I kind of started at the bottom there and worked my way up, and it was a great experience. And to this day I'm tight with Christine Barney, and we just emailed last week, and I worked for her from 99 up until 2005. And, really learned how to become more of a counselor, learned about strategy, learned how to diversify what I did as a PR practitioner. I'll pick the phone and pitch anyone. I was the Jerry Maguire of PR. I put me in front of a reporter, get me on the phone, I will sell the story. I will close it, but could I sit in a meeting and counsel a client? Could I listen? Could I instill confidence? Could I create a strategic campaign? Could I, do all those things that I wasn't learning at Phyllis? And I learned that at RBB. And it was a great time in my life, just kind of learning all of that, and then getting to the point where, I was representing Armando Codina, and getting involved in issues. Back then, Armando, you guys know Codina. Yeah. Back then, Codina was the biggest industrial guy in town.
And are you your office, RBB's office is where?
Still at the same place. RBB was 355 Alhambra.
Okay. And are you married, single at this point?
All right, go back there. So at this point, I'm single.
Still single.
I was engaged to my girlfriend back in the late 90s, and we split up. And then I moved to South Beach and started living a fun life.
Yeah.
I was living on 8th in Michigan and going out 4 nights a week back when South Beach was banging,
What years are we probably crossed paths at some clubs.
Yeah, man. So I was hitting the beach. I mean, look, I was hitting the beach back in the early 90s, and then I went to DC, and then I came back from DC, and Ocean Drive magazine was out, and Ocean Drive went from like being all these little bars like Rebar and The Spot, and now it's like it went big time, you know. And then they had these hotels, and we'd go to the Astor and the Delano.
The Astor on Tuesday nights.
Oh, dude, Astor on Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night. I mean, I did a lot of damage. Remember Jazzed? Like South Beach was fun, man.
Yeah, it was.
And we rode that train.
Early mid 2000s.
Yeah. We rode that train all the way up to about 2005, 2004. And I was living, when I was single, I had a little 2-bedroom flat right in the mix there, a little walk up. And I was going out Ted's Hideaway.
Oh, yeah.
The Room, like just every night.
All the classiest places on the beach.
Right. And seriously, meeting the classiest people. Of course. So yeah, man, I mean, I'm in my late 20s at this point and having a blast and not looking to settle down and just having fun and not really serious about my career outside of, you know what, I got a book of business. I'm doing well. I made partner at RBB. RBB went through some, I learned a lot there. I remember, in 2001, they had the biggest firm by a lot. And we had this little thing called the dot-com boom and bust. You remember that? And we were, back then, 2000, 2001, going in, pitching business for 15, 20 G's a month with a .com that wanted to go public in 6 months. And they were paying it, because they just had a mission. Just get us here, get us in Fast Times, Wired, all this press, this tech press that was going to boost us up, get us to IPO, we're out of here. So they pay our rate. And then the whole bubble burst. We went from, 80, 90 people to 40 to 30 in 6 months. It was horrible. Jeez. It was horrible for everybody. It was, and I went through that. And that's ultimately how I ended up making partner there, because the bulk of my business that I was running was brick and mortar business. Like I had the collection, the car dealership, businesses that existed, not .coms, not air. I had Steele, Hector & Davis, which was a huge law firm. I had, I just had real accounts, so Christine didn't want me to walk. So she's like, well, I'll make you partner. And it was great, and I was like, all right, I can do this, but I was still kind of wasn't taking it that seriously. So I was partner from like 2001 to 2005.
And did you source those clients, or how did you?
Some of them I did,
Okay.
Some of them I brought in with Christine. And I brought in I brought in an art gallery, and I brought in a real estate brokerage, and
I'm not like super familiar with the PR like corporate structure, but it sounds similar to like a law firm.
Yeah, you eat what you kill, and I bring in a client, and clients that I wanted to go after, usually real estate and law firms and consumer. Collection was fun,
and usually you get paid on retainer. There's a monthly or yearly engagement on
retainer.
this.
I mean, some firms do project work, but like the way my firm is set up now, we do all retainer business. We have long-term clients. We keep our clients for 10, 15 years, and we have outstanding clients in all these different industries that I had mentioned. So, and my business was kind of, I learned that at RBB. When we went through those down times, I was like, look, the key to this business is not being in a position where you got to go out and hunt for business. It's get a client, service the fuck out of the client, build the relationship, do the work, do what you say you're going to deliver. Don't overpromise and underdeliver, overdeliver and underpromise. All that stuff I was learning. And if you keep a client small, who cares? You'll grow it because they're going to want to keep you. They will refer you business.
Yeah.
So my whole business grew when eventually I left RBB in 05 because I felt like I was one of 7 partners. And, I was like, you know what? I'm 34, 35 years old. And if I don't do it now, I'm going to be sitting here in 10 years working with great people and making pretty solid money. But, my shot was then. I was still single, had no kids, I had a house. I had just made I sold my South Beach condo. I just bought a townhouse in the Grove. I'm like, fuck it. What do I got to lose? Yeah. I remember talking to my dad about it. I go, Pop, I'm thinking of leaving and starting my own shop. But I'm nervous, man. I mean, I got all these contacts. I had a couple clients that I knew would go with me, and I had some stuff out there. And I called them up, and I was like, kind of like that Jerry Maguire moment, right? Where you're going to do it. Because I had already tried like 2 or 3 times to leave, and I was going to go work with Amy Zachrin, who's a good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And Christine would always talk me out of it. I always tell Christine she would have been a great litigator, a great lawyer, because she's the most persuasive person. She doesn't pitch media, but she's good people. She would talk me out of it, convince me to stay. So finally, in the 3rd time, I was like, you know what, I'm doing this. I remember calling my dad the night before I was meeting with her, and like, Pop, man, I mean, I could fail, I mean, I'm going to open my own shop. I'm going to have to go out and get clients. He's like, Tadd, you don't have any debt. You don't have a wife. You don't have any kids. You got nothing to fucking lose. Yeah. If you fail, you can always go back and work for any agency you want because you're good at what you do, so give it a shot.
That's your worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. You just go out and you get another job, but you're not going to be in a position to go out and try to start your own business. No one wants to try to start their own business when they're in their late 40s, early 50s, or 40 when you got 2 kids and a mortgage. I mean, you got a lot of risk. You got a lot of overhead. You can't fail, or else you're digging a deeper hole. So I was like, fuck it. I did it, and I left, and she knew I was going to leave, and she wished me luck, and she said you can always come back, And I think secretly she wished me well, but I don't think a lot of people had a lot of confidence that I was going to do well or make it a year, because even though I was good at what I did, I was good with media, good with clients, I learned a lot. I was very unpolished as a businessman, you got to run a business, and you don't really know everything. You guys do, but you don't really know how hard it is to run a business.
Taxes and shit.
Fucking dude, you gotta hire an accountant. I'm gonna hire an accountant. I mean, fuck, my dad was doing my taxes.
Right.
So you got to do all that. You got to pay your own health care, man. I'm like, you got like all this stuff. You got to hire people.
So you leave.
So I leave.
Who's your first hire?
Or what's the first move?
Well, my first client I had. So I had a couple clients who I'm good friends with today. My first like legit client was a phenomenal commercial real estate broker by the name of Danette Linares, who works with Terry Blanca today.
Oh yeah,
probably know Danette. I think she's the vice chair of Blanca Commercial Real Estate. At the time, she was running. She was doing the leasing for the Bank of America Tower downtown. It's called something else now. It used to be the Centrus, the big one that lights up.
Is it the Freedom Tower now?
Not the Freedom Tower, the one in downtown.
Yeah,
the one
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
so she was like, look, she was a client. I had brought her into RBB. She's like, you go, I'll go with you. I'm like, fuck.
That's awesome.
You'll go? Yeah. All right, cool. So I got her, and I think my retainer was like $3,000 a month, and I had an art gallery. I was doing Peter Max out of New York. I can't even remember how I got them. I think I represented their agent down here, and he got me the business. I was going out meeting people, man, and I ended up within 2-3 months I had 3-4 clients, so I'm like, and it's all going to me.
Right.
I got 3,000 here, I got 4,000 there, I got, next thing you know, I'm bringing in a couple $100,000, and I got to get out, and I'm still working out of my house in my boxer shorts all day,
Beautiful.
Like, it was awesome.
Living the dream.
And I had this is October of 2005, and I had just met my wife. I met my wife in November of 2005.
And is your wife from Miami? Where is she from?
Yeah, crazy enough, her story is like my story. She's a Cuban Jew. She's from West Kendall. She's 14 years younger than me, so she's the same age as my sister. And I met her out one night. I had gone out with Danette's husband, Matt Hagman. We went out on his bachelor party. Without getting into all the gory details, we left him home. Actually, no, he ended up coming with us. We ended up, skipping all the other stuff. We ended up at this place in downtown Miami called the Pawn Shop. You ever hear that bar?
Avra Jane owned that.
Did she?
I think that was
right
Avra's.
where the art center is today.
Yeah,
it was like they rolled up like a chain garage at like 11 at night, and it was like a killer industrial space with that airplane.
Sounds like Avra.
I think that was
Avra's.
Avra's.
A fucking dive. It was great.
Yeah.
And I ran into my wife there like 2:00 in the morning, and that's how we met. And the rest is history.
Nice.
But I tell that story because it was perfect timing, because I had just moved off the beach. I started my firm and I needed to get serious. I wasn't going out 4 nights a week anymore. I was working 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day. And she moved in within a couple weeks, and we were like hot and heavy right out of the gate. Even though she was still living at home, her parents, lived in Pinecrest. And, so we were engaged within 8 months. And I got very serious on my personal life, which was important because you got to buckle down and work, and that gave me the ability to do what I had to do with building my business, because I was still going out. Instead of going out on South Beach, I was going to events. I was going to real estate events. I was going to law firm events. I wanted to build a business, So, I remember I got my first like legit real estate client. I went to a NAIOP event. You guys are in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
My first legit commercial real estate client after repping Codina, when I was at RBB, I started working with Fairchild Partners. You know Jose Honkadea?
Mm-hmm.
I met Jose through Hank Klein. Hank Klein was a legend.
Attorney.
He worked for Codina for years, and I was taking a piss in the bathroom, and Hank's next to me, and he's like, "Tadd, I heard you started your business." I'm like, "Yeah, I have a client for you." And he introduced me to Jose, reintroduced me because I repped Jose at Codina. And Jose's like, I'm getting Fairchild going. I need a PR guy. And dude, I got him everywhere. He became like the biggest industrial guy in town. I promoted all his stuff, and he had big clients. So after I get Jose, I'm, doing a great. It's how this business works. Everyone starts seeing Jose, who's doing Hunkadea's PR, who's doing Fairchild. Terry Blanca calls Hank Klein. Hank Klein hooks me up with Terry. Terry was running Cushman and Wakefield at the time. And I go from representing Jose Honkadea, paying me, $4,000 a month, which was a lot of money for me. Next thing you know, I'm representing Cushman Wakefield. I'm making like 14 G's a month.
And you're still flying solo.
I'm flying solo. So at this point, I'm like, fuck, I need to hire. And I had a couple interns, and I was hiring people, but they were all either quitting or I had to fire them because, dude, I'm working. I'm getting in there. I had taken office space. My first office was South Miami. Where they used to have that. Where Footworks is in South Miami, across from Sunset Shop, Sunset Place, whatever. Mm-hmm. There used to be this retail store called Lanes. It's not there anymore. Trying to think of what's there now. I don't even know, man. But it's right off of 57th, right off of Red Road, and in front of Sunset Place. And I had this little tiny, no window, about the size of this room, office with Hagman gave me his desk, and I'm working out of that, and it was like a dental office with these bright lights, and I had a little Guinness fridge in there, so I was knocking back beers at 5. And I wouldn't go home till 8, 9 o'clock, all day. And people would be in there with me, holed up in this little room, and I'm like, dude, you got to work the phones, bro. I need that press release. Like, I'm just beating the shit out of people. And they're like, dude, I can't work for you. I was a maniac.
Channeling your inner Phyllis Apple.
Exactly. God, may you rest in peace. So and then finally, after a year and a half of that, I had I had a lot. I got like 6, 7 clients at this point. I couldn't write everything. I couldn't do it all on my own, and I ended up in the hospital one night because I was having panic attacks from all the fucking work. And my wife made me go to the ER, and like my vein was popping out. I was like, always on edge, because I'm just, I want to please my clients. I got to get it done, but I was just working all day, all night. And I was working. One of my interns at RBB was this guy by the name of Aaron Gordon, and Aaron's a phenomenal writer, probably the best writer to this day I've ever worked with. And Aaron was working at a branding shop in South Miami, close to me, and he was coming over and he was moonlighting with me writing press releases. I hired him to write some press releases, and he was expensive. He charged me like $150 for a fucking press release. So after like paying that out for a few months, I'm like, dude, why don't we just work together, you know? And then what he wanted was like a third of my pay. I mean, I was paying big money for him, almost $100,000 to hire Aaron Gordon, plus I had to pay him healthcare and a 401k. And I'm like, dude, I'm a one-man shop, you know? Yeah. But he's like, hey, I got all this at this other company. So that's when you realize I'm running a business. I have to come up with a healthcare plan. Yeah. I got to like do all this stuff, you know? But once I hired him, I went from being just me to like, you know what? I can get Aaron. We could build a firm. You know, now I can go in and pitch real law firms. I had a couple small law firms, you know. So all this is happening. I hire Aaron, you know, and I'm like, I got juice now. I'm like, all right, well, you know, I'm the hair. I could talk. I could close business. Aaron's the brains. Aaron understood. You know, he could take what I was thinking and saying, my vision, and put into a great presentation. We could pitch together, and we just complemented each other perfectly.
And Aaron's still there today?
He's still my partner, you know,
Great.
And he dropped me off here today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's the best. And so, you know, and Aaron was not young, and Aaron wasn't used to, I was a maniac. I mean, you know, Aaron's in-laws live in New York, and my wife and his wife, and we all went up to New York to stay with them one time. And, you know, I'm waking up at Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, emailing clients. I'm like, Aaron, why the fuck, dude? This is your client, bro. Why am I doing, you know, like I was all over his ass. But he stayed with me, to his credit, you know, and he learned the business the way I learned the business. I was the Phyllis Apple to him, you know. And after I got Aaron, there was no stopping us. I could go out. There wasn't one client in this city that I couldn't go after. And, you know, a funny thing happened at that time. This is 2008, going into 2009. You guys remember those times. I don't know if you had your business or where you guys were. You remember where you were when the Great Recession hit?
I was in banking.
All right. So I don't have to tell you how fucking crazy that time was.
Terrible.
So, you know, Great Recession hits, you know, the world collapses, you know, real estate's dead, you know, and I've got about, at this point, maybe 9 or 10 clients, a couple law firms, all real estate. You know, I lost 2 real estate clients complete. One of them went out of business. The other one cut me in half down to like nothing. I fired him. And then everyone else would give me haircuts. I mean, I thought I was going out of business, you know, and somehow I had Terry. Cushman didn't cut us, but cut our retainer. You know, you figure out a way to get through.
Yeah.
But I learned, and I had one law firm at the time, Astigaraga Davis, great law firm, international arbitration. And I'm like, dude, I need to do more than real estate.
Yeah, you got to diversify.
You got to diversify, you know, and that ultimately saved my ass because I had like 2 or 3 resi developers. One of them went out. MFM Construction, great guys. Their business cratered. You know, half my clients went out, you know, but I had enough business outside of resi real estate that got me through. Fairchild did fine. Cushman did fine. Another office developer did fine. The law firm did fine. You know, and we made it through. And after that, I remember sitting down with Aaron. I'm like, dude, we need to build a professional services practice. We need to get a bank. We need to get more law firms. I want to still build resi because it's going to come back. I want to build commercial, you know, because we had Cushman, which was our horse, you know. So anyways, that kind of, the lesson I learned from the Great Recession was, number one, you know, going back to, you know, as good as you might be doing, and you know, I thought I was flying. I'm going to build a huge business. I'm going to go from $500,000 to $5 million in 2 years. Dude, I just wanted to survive and build slowly, and not about revenue, about building trust and relationships and clients and growing the old-fashioned way without sounding corny. That's the key, man. You know, one client at a time, service the shit out of them, and your business will grow because they will help you grow. You know, and so Terry decides one day to leave Cushman and open up her own shop. Blew my mind. She's like, I want you to come with me, you know. So I'm like, all right, I'm in. And this is like right after the Great Recession, you know, and it turned out to be the best thing I did. Cushman fired me right away, which sucked because they were my biggest client. But Terry hired me at a pittance of the cost. But she's like, I will get all of my clients to hire you. She really appreciated my loyalty. And I loved her, you know. And Danette, I ended up introducing Terry to Danette. Danette came over, started working with Terry. We had our first meeting in my office in Coconut Grove. I had moved to the Grove by this point, and had a great law firm, Andy Hall, may he rest in peace, probably the best, toughest attorney I've ever worked with, Holocaust survivor. And he was helping me with business and stuff. And Terry just blew my business up. She introduced me. You had on the show, didn't you? Yeah, Diego or Alan Ojeda?
We had Alan. We had Terry as well.
Okay, so there you go. So I think I watched the Alan show. That's why I called you, because I love Alan Ojeda. Terry introduced me to Alan, and I did 1450 Brickell and the multifamily tower right next door. It was called One Broadway.
Yeah.
And Alan was the best, man.
Yeah.
The Silver Fox, the coolest, you know, just the coolest guy ever. And once I got him, you know, then the world opened up, man. I ended up, my business went from a small time to, you know, probably took in $1.5 million of business in a year, you know, and I ended up working for the Downtown Development Authority, and, you know, my business just took off, and it was, that was the model, you know.
I think you and I first met in, I think it was 2012, through Susie Glass. Is that possible?
Yeah, Susie Glass was great. She worked for.
She was working, I think,
Tony Cho.
She was at Tony Cho, and I think that she was at Severa.
Yeah.
And then I got connected with you.
I just talked to Elisa Severa yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Because of Street Easy.
Yeah. That's right.
I think that's.
You're going back over 10 years.
Yeah, this was 2012.
Susie was great.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then, you know, and again, I know I'm talking a lot, but, you know, what I thought was just really cool about where we were, you know, at that point, you know, we probably had like 5-6 people working for us, and we got involved in.
Your office was at Brickell at one point, wasn't it?
So I was in the Grove until about 2012, and then we moved, or 2011, and then we moved to Brickell.
That's where
moved to 1101 Brickell.
Are you still there in Brickell?
Still, during COVID, we got out of our office lease and went into Pipeline. So I still have the Pipeline office on Brickell, and we just moved to Pipeline Gables.
Gotcha.
So I have both. But Pipeline Gables is technically our HQ now. So, but I was in our own office on Brickell for over 10 years, and which was great because all our clients were on Brickell, and we started representing the DDA, you know, and it was a great time because Miami was kind of, you know, Miami was becoming Miami. You know, we were reeling from the Great Recession. The real estate market was dead, you know, but things were kind of percolating, you know.
Great time to buy.
It's a great time to buy. It's a great time to represent downtown, you know. And what I loved about that account put us on the map.
The DDA?
The DDA.
Yeah.
Because back then the DDA was legit. And no offense to the DDA today. I have clients on the DDA, but it was a different time and a different leadership. The DDA had Alan Ojeda, Nitin Matwani, Neeson Kasdan. Sarnoff was the chair, controversial, but a great chairman. You know, we had everybody, man. We had
Alicia. I think Alicia was on the board too.
Alicia Cervera, Suzanne Amaducci, Gary Ressler. I know he was here.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the guy. Shit, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. His son is Brian. He ran. He ran one of the biggest retail shops in downtown Miami that he ended up selling. Tony Alonso. Tony Alonso was the best, man. He ended up, may he rest in peace. He died of cancer a while ago.
So but just to turn this to down to DDA, I mean, why do you think the DDA was stronger back then than it is today?
So the DDA they became more than just an organization that would put money on the street and help with constituent services, which they still do and they did back then. But the DDA was really the marketing arm for driving business. They were like an economic development agency.
Yeah.
They were doing the work that the chamber should have been doing. No, all respect to the chamber, they weren't doing shit back then. You know, the Beacon Council weren't doing shit. The DDA became the driving force for driving business and promoting Miami. And what they did was, and again, we had the good fortune of kind of coming on the heels of the Great Recession, right? The market collapsed. It was cheap to live in downtown. Developers were buying land. They started developing. So the DDA and downtown Miami, basically downtown went from a few buildings, a few office buildings, and some condos, and it all went vertical. And you had, within a span of, I would say 2002, 2003, 2004, Related started building in downtown. But, and a lot of those buildings kind of went sideways during the recession, right? But after the recession, it was overdrive. And you had over 100 buildings go up, office buildings, condos, and we marketed that. And we basically, I remember we started with the DDA in 2009, right? And 2 months after we started, New York Times comes out with a front page business story called The Icon to Excess. And they did a fucking hatchet job on George Perez's Icon. Remember the Icon?
Yeah.
I think it had like 1,500 units. 10% were sold. The biggest bust was a foreclosure in the history of Miami. Perez lost $1 billion, right? It almost went under. But he came up with the friendly foreclosures and to his credit, worked his way back to the condo king. But, the media were just crushing downtown. But in that story, I got Alice Robertson in that story from downtown. And she basically sent a message like, you know what? I believe in the adage, if you build it, they will come. And we have invested, over $10 billion in infrastructure and investment. We're going to build a vertical city here. We're going to take this city from westward sprawl to a vertical metropolis. And I think that her quote was something like that. And that was 2009. 2 months later, the Herald writes an op-ed, just bashing downtown Miami for not being safe, too much homelessness. Downtown was the armpit of this city.
Well, it still is.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, think about it this way.
I mean, listen, our office is there, and I could tell you.
Where's your office?
Well, we got to bifurcate downtown and Brickell.
Yeah.
But even still, look, you compare downtown Miami to downtown LA,
Yeah,
or downtown Chicago, or even parts of Manhattan, bro. Look, I spend. Well, I'll get to that in a minute, but let me just tell you, people in Miami don't realize what a gem downtown is. All of downtown, even look, I represent Miami World Center. You remember what that area used to look like?
Oh yeah,
Tent City,
yeah.
where the arena was.
But
now World Center is like it's the largest mixed-use project south of Hudson Yards, a city within a city.
I agree 100%, but I really don't consider that downtown. I consider downtown like the Flagler, area.
Flagler is still Flagler.
Yeah.
But even Flagler with the electronic stores and the
luggage stores.
Look, you know what? It's a street that hasn't seen its glory days come back, but the rest of it is. Man, I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid. I have seen, and we had a big hand in it. I mean, look, you had guys like Nitin Motwani in 2012, 13, have the brilliant idea of, hey, you know what? People are moving back here. It was cheap to live in downtown. You could get, 2-3 bedroom condo with a water view for a couple grand. Now you're paying 6-7 G's, I mean, it's stupid how expensive it is today. But back then, people started moving in, developers started building. We went from a full-time population of 25,000 to 130 in 10 years. I mean, you had the demographics just put downtown. We really did go vertical. And that economic influx of business, of migration, of people wanting to live in downtown created so much infrastructure and so much investment. That's what set the stage for what happened during COVID.
Well, listen, I think that, down, like you're right, the glory days of the DDA were, the mid 2010s.
I would say from 2010 to about 2020.
Yeah, and then
right
COVID hit.
COVID.
And then COVID hit, and then we got set back like 10 years again.
Well, hold on. Think about, and again, I'll push back at that, because remember what happened during COVID, right? 2020 hits, right? We've got, and downtown's booming at this point, but we're still kind of, interest rates are high. It's hard to develop, but you're seeing big projects, COVID hits. And I remember December 2020, I'm pitching a Wall Street Journal, and I'm pitching a good friend of mine who I just met with a couple weeks ago he still writes for the Journal. He's the editor, the real estate editor. And I'm like, hey man, I got a big story for you. I go, Miami is going to fucking blow up because of COVID. I got a couple real estate brokers that are doing they're Cushman Wakefield, Brian Gale and Andrew Trench.
Brian's been on the podcast.
Brian's the best. Brian's a
fucking
fraternity brother of
hysterical.
mine from UF.
Oh,
Great-
really?
great
You guys
dude.
are fraternity brothers?
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
shit.
he's a maniac. He'll
There's some
say I'm a
stories
maniac.
there. There's some
He's a
stories.
maniac. Brian-
He's a fucking maniac.
Brian's a maniac.
Holy
And
shit.
probably next to Terry, the most successful broker in town. And just a great guy. Brian's like, look, man, we've got 8, 9 big deals on the shelf. These are big companies that are all moving to Miami. They want to get the hell out of New York. Their employees want to get out of New York. Everyone's locked down. Brian was representing 830 Brickell. 830 Brickell, as you guys know, is, and I did the PR for 1450 Brickell. I did Allen's, and that was up until 830, the most successful Class A office tower, doing $60 a square foot when everyone else was getting $35-$40 for Class A. 830 Brickell comes. They got, going into COVID, they had WeWork, at cut rate, $45 a square foot, nothing. COVID hits and 2021 comes and this migration comes down. They sign Microsoft, they sign Thoma Bravo, they sign CI Financial. They end up, so all of that, and they're doing deals 60, 70, $80 a square foot, and they're just blowing it up. And that combined with all the hedge funds that started coming down and the banks and the businesses, we had the infrastructure at that point and the restaurants to support the business moving down here.
Yeah, but again, like that's Brickell, right? Like I think it's too, like the two sides of the river are very, very different.
But at least on the other side of the river, now you have residential. I mean,
listen,
Miami World Center never gets built if you don't have the, it's all residential and retail.
Miami World Center is great, and Ben and I talk about this all the time.
Did a hell of a job.
It's like you have Brickell and you have Miami World Center, and then you got like the downtown like donut in there, right? Like it's eventually got to change, because everything else is so valuable around it.
Right. Well, think about it.
And we had Neeson on here last week.
And by the way, Neeson Kazan was on the DDA board back then.
And we talked about that. And it was like.
And by the way,
Neeson wasn't that optimistic about downtown either.
Well, and by the way, Neeson represents probably the biggest beneficiary. Miami as the beneficiary. Neeson represents Ken Griffin.
Yeah.
And Citadel ended up taking space at 830 Brickell.
Yeah.
And when that happened.
Do you need another beer, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Let's
Give me
do
a
it.
second.
Yeah, I do too.
So, I think downtown would have never. Miami World Center doesn't get built if Brickell doesn't take off the way it did.
No, I agree. Do you remember? I think it was 2013. Brickell Magazine did that fold-out spread on the cover where you see all the future buildings that were going to come up.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're doing that again now.
Yeah,
it's like a whole new wave.
It's crazy. And I just, I remember when my kids were, my daughter was born in 2011, and I lived in the Grove, and I would take her over the highway, and we would count all the cranes going over the highway. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, what happened? Why are all the cranes there? I'm like, they're building buildings. And what happens when the buildings get built? The cranes go away. And every time I drive my daughter over the highway, now less frequently because she's in LA, but every time we would drive over the highway, the cranes never left. The cranes are just always there. They're always building another office building, another condo.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Look, that's, and quite frankly, that's not overbuilding. If you're going to build vertical, that's where you do it.
Yep.
You build,
where the density is. Yep.
You build in the commercial district, and you build up that infrastructure. And I think the smartest thing Miami ever did was build up its downtown, because it sent the message. And again, we have a lot of issues, transit being one of them. But, it sent the message that we don't have to live our life in a car going from fucking east to west, back east.
Right.
We can build downtown and you can live in downtown, and that changed everything. That's what drove the businesses from New York to come down here, and Ugo said it best. Ugo, in my opinion, was the guy that got it all going, because Ugo built Bristol, he built Santa Maria. He was the first guy that actually was able to build a product that Latin Americans would come and want to live in Miami more than just seasonal. They wanted to live in a luxury tower over the water in a city that was secure and safe and, you know, and all that. And Hugo kicked all that off. That's how South Beach started going. Perez starts building on South Beach after Hugo builds Bristol. And, you know, he was the king. And he was the guy that kind of looked at Brickell and all of that downtown area and even the Grove as a blank canvas and said, right now, this is all low rise, other than a few buildings. This thing has potential. You're right on the fucking water, you know, and you don't realize how cool our downtown is until you go to LA. I live in West Hollywood in LA. If I want to go to downtown on a Saturday or on a Wednesday, it's taken me an hour and a half. Easy. Hour and a half to get to downtown, whereas it should take me 20 minutes with no traffic. Anywhere in Miami, you can get to downtown, you know, within half an hour, 45 minutes tops, you know. That's if you're in Homestead. You know, our downtown's on the water. It's easy accessible.
I know. I love when people bitch about traffic here. I'm like, if you guys haven't lived in LA,
traffic is not great here, but LA, like people don't go anywhere in LA because you just can't. It's miserable.
I lived in Glendale for 2 years, so
and by the way, I love Glendale. That's cool as shit. My son has baseball practice in Glendale tonight.
Oh yeah,
bro. My wife's gonna be in the car for an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, that's where his coach wants
from
to
WeHo to Glendale.
Yeah, Glendale's great, man.
I went to Art Center right above the Rose Bowl.
Oh no shit. That's really cool. Wait, so why were you out in LA?
Art school, photography.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear that. You were in
I was supposed to be a photographer, and then 08, 09 hit. We ran out of money and started buying distressed debt.
I'm going to go into real estate, baby. I'm going to be a vulture.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to get Peter Zalewski on the show. You ever have him?
No.
He was the condo
Mr.
vulture.
Crane Watcher.
You think I talk a lot? Zalewski talked me under the table.
I believe that.
But hey, you know what? You were smart. You know, you come in and you buy. You're opportunistic. You know. So, anyways, you know that I think investing and growing downtown changed the game for Miami because we became a big boy city. You know, and Nitin said it best too. I mean, Nitin came from the finance world up in he went to Duke and he worked on Wall Street. You know, and he came down. He's like, look, man. I got investors, I got lenders that come down here, and you know we're like rinky dink. We don't have great restaurants in downtown. They've got a few hotels. I mean, they don't want to do business down here. They want to come they want us to come up to New York, do our deals, and they'll come down here to party and go to 11 and do whatever the hell they do, and then go back. This isn't a full-time real city. We need to invest in our urban core, Brickell, north of the river, all of that to really grow up. And we're not there yet. You're right. I mean, we got to fill out, and all that's coming, by the way. You know, I mean, there's some big projects that, if they happen, are going to change the game. And just like we've been saying with all these other projects that, it takes time. Yeah. It takes a lot of money, and it takes vision. But, look at how far our downtown has come since 2001. In 24 years, we have made more strides in becoming a real business city, a business hub. We were fucking Miami Vice for how long?
There's probably an argument to be made that Miami is probably densified more than any other city in the United States in the last 20 years.
I would definitely believe that, because where else can you do that? Where else is there enough opportunity? Chicago? No, not really. New York's already there. I mean, LA, forget about it. Like
look, LA's got great. I love LA.
So a quick question. Let's talk about LA, because you kind of live there part time now. Like, why are you have a foot in each city? How did that end up happening? As most people have left LA to come to Miami, you're going the other way.
The running joke is I'm the only schmuck that likes to pay more taxes, right? I mean, and Lord knows I am, but I'm one of those guys, and I don't live with regret at all. But because after college I moved to DC and I did that thing. But my thing was, I remember reading that book, the Kerouac book, On the Road.
What a great book.
What a fucking greatest book.
Such a good
book.
It
opens your eyes to dude, I want to get in a car. Yeah. I want to drive to the West Coast. And I want to hit some bar. I want to live the road, like Bruce Springsteen, man. And, I never went west. I never did the West Coast thing, and I didn't go to LA until I ran the San Diego Marathon in 2002 for the first time. And I just kind of missed that boat to go do my West thing. Not that I wasn't going to be an actor or any of that. I wanted to live. I wanted to be out West, and my wife too. my wife always wanted to live in LA. So her little brother moved out there, and we had friends and family, and we started, I want to say like in 2010, we started going out there. Soon after we met, every summer, we'd rent a house in a different place in the hills, you know, for 2 months, Airbnb it or whatever, and just like dream about living here. And, you know, you're hiking and it's beautiful, you know? So every year we're doing that. And so we ended up, I remember 2013, 2012, I got Walmart as an account, big account. And that was like next to the DDA, one of our biggest, we still have Walmart today. And we repped the DDA for 15 years until we resigned because of just some conflicts we had. But, you know, we had both those, DDA 15 years, Walmart for over 15 years. I got Walmart, and I'm with my wife in LA, and I'm like, fuck it, let's buy a house. We bought a house out in LA, which was the stupidest thing we could have ever done, because then we had to like rent it out and manage it from Miami, which was a nightmare. But we had it for like 10 years. And, you know, I had bought other houses down here, and, you know, my life took off. I had kids, I had debt, I had mortgage, I had 4 houses, I had 3 here, 1 in LA, and I'm like, fuck, you know, I was, you know, you grow up real quick when you take on that kind of stuff. So I was trying to sell the house a few times, couldn't sell it because the market sucked out there at the time. And then COVID hits. I was trying to sell the house when COVID hit. Like, I can't even get asking price now. And I had owned the house for 8 years. Beautiful house up in the hills. So COVID hits, you know, my business, I think, like everyone, world's going to end, but we were within 3 months, I knew we were going to be fine. You know, within a year, my business started growing again. You know, you get through the hard times, your clients that love you stay with you. A few left, but for the most part, you know, I think we lost $500,000, and then within a year we were up $1 million, you know, I mean, and my wife and I were walking one day, and, you know, we still had our house and we had a renter in there, and she was like, you know, what are we going to do with the LA house? And I was like, fuck, man, we're in lockdown down here, you know. Miami hadn't really opened up big time yet. Like, why don't we just move? Why don't we sell the house? Right now, people are starting to come back to Miami, get good money. We had a house in the Grove, beautiful house. But I was like in South Grove, right off the water, a block off the water. I'm like, if a hurricane hits, we're fucked. I'm going to be 10 feet underwater. Like, why don't we sell the house? We made pretty good money. We sold the house. We moved into our house in LA, fixed it up. Construction was cheap.
And you went on lockdown in LA?
Went in serious fucking lockdown in LA.
Sounds like a fucking
Dude,
great
you
time.
had to show an ID to get in there. But you know what? We didn't care because I wasn't even going out to eat.
Yeah.
You know, we were hiking every day. I'm working at it. You know, I was still coming back to Miami like I do now.
Did they allow you to hike in LA during the lockdown? Or
You know,
no?
let me tell you something. LA it's funny because I'm Cuban. And I come back to LA. My parents live in my old house. When we had kids, my parents moved into my old house in the Gables, which is a block off of UM. All my neighbors, all Cuban, MAGA, hardcore MAGA. And I come back they all know I was tight with a lot of them. I still am. And they knew I was moving to California. And this is pre-Trump. You know, I moved out there during when Trump was president. You know, and they're like, why are you moving to California, bro? You know, it's fucking blue state.
You gotta wear masks out there.
But you think
and
it was
shit.
bad in 2019, you know, like the politics is much worse now. So when I come home now, it just happened to me yesterday. You know, one of my Cuban neighbors, he's out. He's always doing stretches in front of his garage. He's like, bro, welcome back to freedom, bro. Welcome back to freedom. You know, I'm like, dude, my kids can't read a book, you know, in school, but yeah, I'm back. You know, like that's the kind of shit. And it's funny, you know. Look, California's great, you know. Is it bureaucratic? Yeah, but
the lifestyle and the nature is
it's a
epic.
great lifestyle.
Yeah.
You're outdoors. It's the difference that I really come to appreciate Miami's a much cleaner city. Cleaner.
Yeah.
You know, and the work ethic. Like, bro, I'm Cuban. Nobody works like we work. Nobody
in Miami?
In Miami.
Dang.
I mean, everybody works here. Yeah. You know, even though I don't know how the young people are, but everybody works. They work hard. In LA, no one works. You know, it's LA time. It's a.
That's funny.
so
I hear the
funny.
opposite. I feel like everyone says nobody works here.
Yeah.
Well, you know, look, you know, it's like why they say you go travel. You know, when you travel, you kind of get a different perspective on the world, and you come back and you appreciate. So whenever I come back to Miami, which is every 6 weeks, you know, for a week or two, I appreciate as much as I love LA and I love how my kids are growing up there, LA is a lot less plastic than this city is, even though it's the home of plastic fucking surgery in Hollywood. But it's like people are, it's just a different vibe. But, you really come to appreciate, people really bust their ass here, and it's got a good, I just love being around my people here because, it brings me back to my roots.
And you still have a house here?
Yeah. When I come down here, we have a house on Siena Avenue, which I named my daughter after, right off of you. And my parents live there, so I come and I stay with my parents.
That's
which
awesome.
Makes my mom really happy, And I sold my other house, and we have our place in LA. So I come back, I run the shop from LA, and and I have some big clients out there. I've got the largest mixed-use project in the country, 10 billion plus, which is rising in Beverly Hills. I got another client that's big down here.
Who's building that?
Is that Caruso?
So, by the way, Caruso's a badass. He's running for mayor. I hope he wins.
I love his developments. I used to love going to the Americana and the Grove. Like
the Grove. My daughter goes to Grove every weekend.
I think those are just like, I would love to bring something like, I've always thought something like that here would just be so epic.
Merrick Park, it's
close. It's close.
If Caruso would have built Merrick Park and designed it the way he designed the Grove, they got a trolley going through there.
The music.
I mean, the Grove is packed all day, all night with great stores. Merrick Park is a joke compared to the Grove, And
but it has the bones. It's almost
there.
It's
got the bones, but it just
does it?
Yeah.
I feel like Merrick Park is not like
they didn't design it.
Yeah,
they didn't design it
properly.
right.
No, but the idea is
they designed it like a mall without.
It's
a
like
roof.
half-assed there.
Yeah. The Caruso not only is a great developer, but he's a visionary in the sense that he designed and protected his buildings to withstand fire, storm, earthquake. I mean, all his projects, when the Palisades fire, he has the Palisades Village, which is in the heart of the Palisades, one of the only projects that didn't burn down. And the Palisades fire it's like they took a match to Coral Gables and it doesn't exist. And that's how bad. Palisades is very similar to the Gables.
Yeah.
It's like you walk through the Gables and there's nothing there. 1 out of 20 houses survive.
Crazy.
Is Caruso one of your clients?
No. But I just have a lot of respect for him.
Okay.
So the project I represent.
So we're going to ask you to get him on the podcast for us. That's why.
Let's get him down here. I mean, he's just and he's a moderate Republican. Not like a MAGA Trumper, but just a great level-headed. He's like a Republican under Reagan. That kind of.
I feel like we need more of those.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, we do. Same with the Democrats. I mean, the left.
Exactly.
We can have a whole other podcast on politics, but we need more centrist thinking, man, with social issues, with political issues. Caruso's that guy, But so the project we rep is actually being developed by Kane. Kane is Vlad's partner. Vlad is Oko Group, Vlad Peronis.
Yep.
So Kane partnered with Oko to do 830 Brickell, Una, Masoni. They got a bunch of projects in South Florida. So when they were building in Beverly Hills, they hired us they're also bringing in Amman there. So we're kind of representing the project and the Amman component. And that project's taken off. I mean, they're selling condos starting at $25 million and up. I mean, it's insane. In Beverly Hills, off the water. Different market.
Yeah.
How
do you, sorry to interrupt you, but
That's right.
How do you keep it fresh all these years pitching real estate? Like, how many stories can you tell about someone building a building? It just seems like it's the same story over and over and over and over
look,
again.
you gotta. So I'll tell you a perfect example.
Is this your runner's high influence?
And by the way, that absolutely. I mean, I come up with I don't know what you guys do to get creative other than, smoke a joint. Really not my vibe anymore. I run. I get up if I have a big meeting on Zoom at 8:00, or I got a meeting here tomorrow, I got a meeting at 9:00. I'll wake up at 5:30, 6, and I'll go run for an hour, and I work it out. And I
you listen to music or no?
Nah. I mean, sometimes I do, but if I'm like working stuff through my brain, I just go solo. Mm-hmm. The hills is, I like running in LA because I'm running in hills.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and here I
How
like
long
it.
you run for?
Anywhere from an hour to half an hour to an hour and a half. I'll just go. I'm like Forrest Gump, man. If my knees were better, I've been running for a long time, so my knees are kind of shot. My hips are hurting. But
you gotta channel your inner Goggins.
yeah, man.
Embrace the suck.
You got to do what you got to do. And bro, I'll knock back. I could drink a 6-pack with you right now, but if you like beer as much as I do, you got to run. So look, to answer your question, you can't make it about your client. You got to make it about the market, The best story I pitched on Ugo Colombo, wasn't about his project. When Brickell Flatiron?
Yeah.
So I remember being in a meeting with Ugo in his sales center, and we're meeting about the project. And in the middle of the meeting, just like this, he's looking out and he sees a tile that didn't fit with the rest of the tile that was going in the model of the sales center. He's like, hold on. He goes out and he starts bitching. He was obsessive compulsive about every element, still is, design of the building, the tile, the appliances, the kitchen, the balconies. I mean, Ugo flies to Italy to pick out and source what's coming into the building, the concrete, the marble, everything, man. I mean, OCD, which is why he's the best, So I ended up pitching a story I think it was in the Miami Herald. It was a front page Business Monday back when they had that. And the narrative of the story is why Ugo's buildings stand the test of time, because this is a developer that doesn't, he doesn't build for quantity. He builds one at a time. He's the opposite of George Perez. With all due respect, I think Related is an insane developer, one of the best, the condo king. But they'll build 10, 15 buildings while Ugo builds one. Ugo will invest the time. He puts his heart and soul into one building and he builds them. And, that's why Santa Maria, that's why you guys know about it. That building was built delivered in 1997. We're still talking about that as one of the best buildings in the country. Bristol Tower, the Grosvenor, So anyways, when we were promoting that building, I pitched a story, and it was all about how this developer is sparing no expense and time and energy to create a masterpiece with his own vision as a developer puts its heart in there. And the story became, about Brickell Flatiron and sales and all that, but how this guy gets his projects done, left a lot of money on the table to not go after other deals because he only does one at a time. And at the same time, he got really fortunate. I mean, Ugo's one of the greatest real estate deals I ever seen. Ugo, where the Aston Martin building is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember who owned the land?
I remember that $125 million sale.
That was Ugo.
Yeah.
Ugo bought that piece. He built the Epic Hotel and Residence. That was half the land. He built that right before the Great Recession. Recession hits. Ugo was going to build another condo on the other piece, but wisely just did one at a time. Recession hits. He would have gone under. He would have lost it if he built that. Waits it out till, I want to say 2011. Flips. He bought the whole piece for $25 million and flipped the other piece for 130.
Yeah.
I mean, retire, dude. You don't need to do anything after that. I mean, you're done.
He's not the kind of guy that will ever retire.
No.
Probably.
After that, he did the Brickell Flatiron. Then he did Owned Up in Bell Harbor. Now he's got the two largest projects in Miami. You got Vita and Grove Isle, which is a huge success, almost done. And he's doing another one with Fort in the Grove. Remember the old office tower in the Grove? That just came down. Right on Bayshore.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
He's building, 100 units, starting at $5-6 million. I mean, incredible project. So,
But for Ugo, you basically tapped into his craftsmanship for Flatiron.
You got to get creative with telling the story behind the story, right? Anybody can go out and pitch, I got a new project coming up. All right, great. What do you do after that?
Right.
How do you create news outside of what the client's giving you? That's what we're good at,
right.
So I do that with law firms. Right now, the big story in real estate law is interest rates are going to come down, right? So how do we leverage that for our real estate attorneys that are doing construction financing? Whenever these developers, you just had a big deal that hit today, $530 million, 2 roads closed, the largest construction loan in Tampa for the Pendry. One of my guys that builds in Sunburg did that loan. So now we're going to start putting him out as a thought leader in all the media, talking about how interest rates are coming down. You're going to start seeing a lot of projects that have been on the shelf, multifamily, condo, industrial, that can't get the financing because it's too expensive. How are they going to get built? Now they're going to get built. They're going to come off the shelf because you got money, and these guys are going to do this. So they want to be out there talking about that because they want to do those deals, and that's what we do. I keep them out in the press. I create content. We market them.
So it's more than just calling newspapers and telling them to publish a story. It's creating a whole strategy around how to position these people in the way to have the best
visibility. Hey, look, part of what we do is what you guys are doing. I mean, what you guys are doing, you guys are commercial brokers, right? I mean, what's your specialty? Industrial. All right. But how many other industrial brokers are doing what we're doing right now? None. I mean, you're building a brand as being connected to all, not that I'm a player, but all the other guys you have in here, from Ojeda to Comras, you got some big names coming in here. You guys are connected. You guys are actually getting your brand out there when there's, 100 other commercial brokers doing industrial in this market. People know you. You're building, you're amplifying your brand in a creative way through podcasts, through social media, through events. That's what we do.
Yeah.
You guys are, I tell them, I show my guys what you guys have done and posting it on YouTube and all this. This is the secret sauce. And it's very valuable today, just as valuable as doing media. There's certain media that still is the gold standard, the Journal, being in niche trade pubs that your client's audience is reading, the Times, just specific, but, media, has shrunk significantly over the last 20 years, and it's a different ballgame now. You got to do everything.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I listen to a lot of, do you follow Scott Galloway at all?
Mm-hmm.
Big fan
of his. I think
he's
great.
I think he's amazing.
I love him.
I love his perspective,
very smart. He tries to keep it non-political, but he's political.
Yeah, I mean, his pivot show is pretty political, but I mean, he's still like, he's still that centrist, right? Like, and he always has an interesting perspective. And, TV is done pretty much. Like all those like NBC, CBS,
the talking heads.
Yeah, for anyone under 70 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, I can't watch it. It's so over the top angry.
Yeah.
I mean,
just rage baiting. Yeah.
I mean, look at what happened last week with Charlie Kirk. I mean, forget the politics. I mean, that fucking psycho that shot him was influenced by whether TV, social media. I mean,
probably the social media echo chambers. You get fed this narrative.
I mean, he was on stuff I'd never even heard of, or whatever these chat rooms are. But I look, man, I stay off of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. We don't play ball there.
So TV is kind of dying. Newspapers in general are
unless it's CNBC and Fox and the big stuff.
It seems like Scott Galloway is a big podcast guy. He thinks that we're like in the second or third inning. On podcasts. I mean, what are you seeing? What are the new trends in media? Where are you trying to get your clients in? And where are you trying to tell those stories? What are those channels?
Look, first of all, I think you guys are tapping into it. I think doing what you're doing right now, because you're doing two things. One of which is old school, and one of which is new school. The podcast format is great because it's person to person. You're pressing the flesh. You're connecting. Right, especially coming out of COVID, what did we crave the most? This.
That's why we don't do any remote podcasts.
Fuck that. Yeah. Zoom is awful, man.
It's
awful.
terrible.
I'd rather talk on the phone. You're standing behind a computer, dude. It's mind numbing.
Yeah.
So to me, that was an unfortunate necessity. But what I think, at least in my business, we focus on. I still believe earned editorial in the right publication with the right message is still the gold standard. But I think
I'm sorry, what'd you call it?
Earned editorial media coverage.
Okay.
And real, and if you're trying to position your project, let's say for real estate, or an attorney or a bank, you get them in the Wall Street Journal, you get them in Bloomberg, that's moving the needle because it's got credibility, The other is, the right kind of content, whether you're creating content like this is content. This is a podcast. But this takes the content to another level. You're also creating a relationship now. Now I know you guys, and I'm connecting with my audience, not just with content that might make it in print. I'm connecting by video. I'm pushing it out on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever platform you want. There's ways to now amplify what we're doing right here, which you guys are doing, things like that are really changing the game. But I think it goes back also to, how do you personalize your marketing, right? I mean, you can do the press, you can do the social, you can do the digital marketing and the e-blast, all of which you guys are doing. You guys are running a great multifaceted PR campaign for yourselves, right? The key is then connecting the dots and getting in person events, one-on-one. And this is where, this is why this is so important. I think the more you can use your marketing to get back to getting in a room with people, sharing experiences, telling stories, getting to know people beyond, getting Neeson Kasdan to go beyond talking about what he's doing as managing partner of Ackerman Centerfit, whatever. It's boring after 10 minutes.
I don't think we even talked about that with him.
Right. You're talking about, Miami. You're talking about what it was like to be mayor. You're talking about his golf game.
It's authenticity, right? Everyone craves authenticity these days. We're sick of the polished bullshit. We want to know what's the real.
That's right. And I think this is a great format. There's other formats, but look, to your point, the best kind of marketing, in my opinion, which is hard today because any platform that I just mentioned, you got influencers, you got ads. You're filled with all that crap, and it's hard to get organic and real on any of those venues. This is real. I'm dropping F-bombs. We're talking real stuff. We're talking anything, and the more opportunities you can create that isn't being influenced by someone trying to sell you makeup or beer or whatever, Peroni, look, our world is filled with that. Our kids are inundated with that shit 24/7, So, I think the best kind of marketing going forward is almost going to be a throwback to, the old school ways of marketing. Stop emailing, pick up the phone. Stop texting, go out to lunch, connect with people, don't read off of your phone, pick up a book, turn the page, make a connection in a way that's beyond a click.
But by the way, Tadd actually brought a physical book into this.
There's paper over there.
There's paper. A tree was killed because of that.
The year of dangerous days.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, man.
We like to see that.
You know what? How are we doing on time, by the way?
We got all the time in the world.
Oh shit! I've been talking for 2 hours, man. Fuck, time flies.
It does.
What else you guys want to talk about?
Let's talk a little bit about this book that you're reading.
Actually, I haven't started reading it yet. I always wanted to. So I'm old. I'm gonna be 56 in a month. And I grew up during this time. But I think
what's the title of the book and who wrote it?
The Year of Dangerous Days: Riots, Refugees, and Cocaine in Miami in 1980. Nicholas Griffin. So.
And when was this book written?
Because this was probably, and my partner Aaron told me to get this. This guy reads a lot. He said this is probably one of the best nonfiction books he's ever read.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
So I'm sure, if you ever, who'd be great to have on this podcast? Get Billy Corbin and Albert Spellman.
Yeah.
Who did Cocaine Cowboys and a million other podcasts.
I would love to get them on here.
They'd be great.
You know those guys?
I mean, I know I'm better friends with Spellman.
Yeah.
And he's tight with my sister. Corbin, I don't really know outside of us sparring. He's, we just have fun beating each other up. They'd be great. And I can connect you to Spellman. You should get them on here. But, those guys, what they tapped into, this book captured, so this kind of talks about 1980 and how 3 really humongous events happened in Miami that year that really changed the city forever in a lot of great ways and a lot of dangerous ways. One, you had the Mariel boat lift when Castro, there's my mom right now, mama. It's like I'm 15 years old again.
You going for dinner?
Back in Miami, and bro, she's like, "What are you doing for dinner? What time are you gonna be home, bro? You've been out too, So the Mariel boat lift happened in 1980. Castro, just played Jimmy Carter like a fiddle and basically cut a deal. And hey, you know what? We're gonna let the residents living in Miami pay $500 to get their family out of Cuba and bring them to Miami. And he had a fleet of boats called the America, painted red, white, and blue. And he loaded up the boats, got money from citizens living here, And for every citizen, he had 3 convicts.
Yeah.
He unloaded the insane asylums, he unloaded the jails, whatever. You know the story.
I think in 1 year, like the population of Miami grew like 150,000 people.
I just reminded
which
of the
is
opening
fucking crazy.
scene of Scarface.
Scarface, one of my favorite movies. And by the way,
Me too.
True story, where I live in LA, I live in Laurel Canyon. There's a area next to Laurel Canyon called Mount Olympus, which they built in the 70s. It's like, built on, like Brickell's built on cocaine. This was built on cocaine. It's all the homes from the 70s are like Greek statues with the pillars and just
mirrors.
Giant homes on the hill, mirrors, black bathrooms, all that stuff. So when's the last time you saw Scarface?
Oh, man, it's been a few years, but I've seen it many times.
Do you remember the scene where Tony goes to Manolo's house and he sees his sister coming down the stairs and he pops Manolo, shoots him in the stomach?
Yeah.
So that house where he does it is half a mile from my house. I run by it all the time. And it's this, it looks exactly the same except they put a fence. It's got the lions, it's got the pillars, it's got the big, and it's just a big, beautiful white house on a hill. And it was supposed to be set in Miami, but it was really LA.
Yeah, they started filming it in Miami, and then shit got real crazy, and they're like, I guess people caught wind of what they were doing here, and they had to basically head back over to LA. They
ended up shooting 90% of the film in LA, but the most iconic scene was shot in Miami on Ocean Drive when Pacino is about to get sawed by the dude, and then he pops the dude, and that's right in front of the CVS.
Yep.
It is a CVS, I think.
Yeah, that's the CVS. Yeah, they have a little statue. This is where the Scarface is.
That's funny.
So, anyways, I digress. What were we talking
about? We're talking about this book and just
anyways, Mario Boatlift happens. That's number 1. Number 2, the McDuffie riots. So McDuffie, I don't know if you remember this, but you weren't here back then, but I remember because I was 10 years old. McDuffie was a black guy on a motorcycle, runs a stop sign.
He was a Marine.
He's a Marine, runs, and he ends up getting stopped by the cops, and 15 white cops eventually circle him and beat the fucking hell out of him, kill him.
Yep.
He dies an hour after he gets to the hospital. They compared his trauma to being dropped off a 4th-story condo, 4-story building on your forehead. Like his forehead was mush from getting. So anyways, the cops go on trial, and
innocent, right?
They're all found innocent. Yeah. And kind of like what happened with Rodney King in LA, when LA burned, Miami burned. Overtown, Wynwood, all that, it just burned. The biggest riots. And
did you notice this as a kid other than the news?
Yeah, man, I remember being with my mom driving in her car and seeing smoke.
Wow.
And at that time I lived in Westchester with my abuela. I remember it. It was you couldn't go out, I mean, we were afraid to go anywhere in Miami because people were getting pulled out of cars and getting their ass kicked. It was, I was 10 years old, fucking crazy shit. And then what's the other thing? And then, then it was the start of the Cocaine Cowboys. Yeah. And funny story, this is why I mentioned Spellman and Corbin. This must have been like 8-9 years ago. I'm at a restaurant on South Beach with 2 of my friends, and end up sitting next to Spellman. And I grew up with these guys. We went to Miami Lakes Junior High and then HML together. And I'm like, this is Alfred Spellman. He did Cocaine Cowboys, and so we're like talking about growing up in Miami. And he's like, puts his producer hat on. He's like, starts asking us all these questions. And he's like, dude, you grew up in Hialeah, Miami Lakes, da da da. He's like, what year? And I was like, I went, I was in middle school in 1980, 81, and, all through the 80s. And he's like, so he's like, do you ever witness any, like, I'm like, yeah, I knew what he was going to ask. He was asking me about, like, murders and stuff. And my buddy Joe was like, tell him when we saw the dead body in the lake. So I'm like, yeah. So in 1981, we used to ride our bikes to school from Lakes to, it was like a 10-minute bike ride. And on the way, you'd pass all these little town home communities, Miami Lakes. There's lakes all over. Real pretty. And on the way, we're going up Ludlam Road, and you see all these cop cars. Oh, dude, I'm going back 1981, dude, long time ago. But I remember it vividly. We stop, we go over, and there's a body floating. First time I'd ever seen a dead body. He was floating on his stomach, so I didn't see his face. He just bloated. He'd been there for a couple days. Like, fuck. So we're like, whatever, stay out there, hang out for 5 minutes. Cops tell us get the hell out of there. We go to school. We're riding our bike through the football field to get to school, and we see patches of blood, like big, soppy, wet puddles of blood, like 5 of them in the football field. I remember it. I'm on my little mongoose, like, holy shit, man. So I tell this to Spellman. He's like, dude, that was the Gaviana murders. I know that hit. It was around the same time frame. It happened in Miami Lakes. Like because those guys research they researched every drug hit or mafia hit in Miami from '79 when the Colombians came in all the way up through 1990, whenever it was. I mean, they knew, and that's what this book is about. That's a lot of
murders. I think there was like 500 murders a year or something like that. Maybe even more than that. Like insane, it was something.
Right. It was all fueled on coke. Yeah. It was the drug trade blew up. Brickell Avenue got built that way. I mean, Scarface nailed it. And that movie was like a joke at the time, but it's such a great personification of how Miami was at that time, when, the flashy gangsters and I was too young for any of that, but I remember like my parents used to go to Regine's. They used to go party at the Grand Bay Hotel back when all that shit was going down, in the early 80s, and my dad would probably tell you some fun stories if he was on the show.
I bet. What a time.
But anyways, I've always wanted to read this, and this book kind of captures all that, And actually, one of my clients, so Janet Reno is, who used to be our attorney general, as you remember, she was, shit, man. I feel like she was not the prosecutor, but I forget what her role was, but she was involved in the trial for the prosecution. And one of my clients, the managing partner of Bills and Sunberg, Al Dotson, was clerking for her at the time when all this was going on. Al's one of the best attorneys in town, P3 guy. And I remember talking about this book with him a few years ago. So anyways, I've always wanted to read it, and I picked it up.
Cool. We love Miami history.
Yeah, man.
And so
I was telling you before.
I'll send you guys a copy.
We talked to Gerald and Trisha Posner, who wrote a history of Miami book as well, Miami Babylon.
Well, so. I've heard of Miami Babylon. Did you guys read it?
Yeah. Really.
What's it about?
It goes from Carl Fisher to 2000s.
But it's really mostly focused on like really the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right.
The other book that I read about Miami history is Bubble in the Sun. And
Bubble in the Sun?
Yeah, and that's mostly focused about in the 20s.
Okay. Selling Swampland.
Yes, slinging Swampland here in Miami. Also a great book.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's kind of like with the Everglades and what it was and how we built it up. And
Yep.
All the swindlers.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was. I mean, you had to have some balls to come down to Miami.
Listen, our history is very young, but it is very colorful to say the least.
Yeah, dude. Where do you guys do most of your business? Like on the industrial side, all over, or like where do you specialize in?
Hialeah, Opelika, Alapata, and Golden Glades. Kind of
great area. All industrial.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you want to be. You guys know Brian Smith over at JLL?
By name, we haven't met him.
Brian's one of my long-term clients. Great guy.
Oh, yeah?
Audley Bosch, Brian Smith. Those guys are best in the business.
Yeah, our whole thing is, we think that the old warehouse districts of Wynwood, Little River, all that is slowly being redeveloped.
Everything east of 95.
Yeah, there's no warehouses there. So where's the next frontier of warehouses? It's that.
Corridor.
It's that corridor over there. So there's always going to be uses for creatives over there, small warehouse spaces, last mile logistics,
last mile stuff. Right.
Yeah. So it's all going there.
Industrial has just been a constant. That industry has constantly been a demand industry. I feel like resi has gone up and down, office has gone up and down, retail, but industrial stays strong because of what and there's so much. I mean, this market is so diverse. You've got, like you just described, all these different neighborhoods where you can put industrial.
Well, you really can't build it anymore, too, right? Like there's
only so much zoning that allows that.
Yeah.
Right. And look, the key, one of the big issues we have today, a lot of them, but the big issues are affordability, obviously, and lack of land. And the lack of land is driving up prices for everything, and developers every year keep getting fucking stupid, trying to go past the urban development boundary line and build further west, which is not the solution. Which brings me back to downtown. The solution is infill, build vertical, build more housing, rebuild housing into urban core. Don't keep going west. You keep going west, you're creating more traffic, and you're creating an environmental hazard. I mean, we need the Everglades. Yeah. It's our swamp. It's our drainage system. Look what happened to Houston. Houston gets clobbered by every storm because they fucking turned it into a concrete canyon. Yeah. I mean, that's, to me, green infrastructure is the saving grace. And if we keep demolishing and paving over, I sound like Joni Mitchell, paving over paradise. But bro, it's true.
I agree.
I mean, it's, whoever designed the design, not design district, but Wynwood Walls, I fucking hate going to Wynwood. Why? Because it's all concrete. They forgot to plant trees.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hot.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't designed. It just kind of happened.
Happened. Fine. It's great for how it happened, and they had their moment. But you can't. Why do you think the Grove is the most popular city in Florida right now, in South Florida? Because it still has that bohemian,
old Florida charm.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful living in the Grove. You can bike. You're on the water. It's gorgeous, man. That's, to me, the greatest city in Miami.
We tend to agree. So what's next for Schwartz Media? I mean, are you going to open an LA office here soon?
No, man. Look, number one,
I'll never stay in Florida.
We have, a good way to wrap up. But we have built our brand on Florida. Our trajectory of growth, which has been slow, stable, sustained growth with people and clients. We're about a $4.5 million revenue company.
How many people you got working?
About 20, 21. And, all our clients have a stake in Florida, from Jacksonville and Tallahassee on down. We're diverse. We're really looking to continue to work with clients, whether it's a law firm, a bank, a client like a Walmart, that are continuing to invest in the state, that want to invest for the right reasons, that want to create jobs, that want to invest in communities. I have a client, David Martin, who I'm going to get on the show.
Oh, we're actually we're doing a podcast with him. Good. With ULI. We're doing.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. I was on those emails. Yeah. Okay, with Julie over at ULI.
Julie
right?
Medley. Yep.
Yeah. Good. I told David to do it.
David's been playing hard to get with us.
I was
and
with
we finally
David.
Fucking get him.
This
so
way,
thank
David
you.
got pissed at me today. I was in a meeting with him this morning at 10 o'clock. He's in a meeting with fucking David. You think I talk? Dude, David starts the meeting with a whiteboard on TV. He's got, all right, we have 39 projects. And he just...
Is that how many he's got going on right now?
Those are active. Then he's got legacy projects.
That's fucking nuts.
Dude, and he's involved to the minutia on every one. And he was like, at one point he got pissed at me because he was talking about how this project got delayed because we were about to build the bridge, but the city screwed up because the infrastructure, the water line is underneath where we were going to put the bridge, and we're delayed. And we found it out. So meanwhile, 3 projects later, I ask about the bridge. He's like, bro, I already talked about that. I'm like, dude, he moves too fast, man. You're still thinking about one project and he's on to 7 more, He's just, he's got ADD in that way, but he's on everything. So, But David's a guy, the reason I brought him up, and he's the perfect developer to work with. He started out as a condo guy, him and his dad. He just gave back the Freedom Tower. He gave back the Freedom Tower years ago, but they just revitalized the Freedom Tower. It was a big event last night. David's family donated that to the city. David just did condos, and now he's doing mixed use. And every project that he does, he's reinvesting in the community. So he's building public spaces, he's building green space. He gives back to any community through, the development agreement. That he basically says to the community, I'm going to go. He meets with everyone. He's not sending his lobbyists. David will go in and say, here's what I want to do. What do you want? And let's find a happy medium. I'm not building as of right. I'm building as a privilege. Development is a privilege, not a right. I don't care what my permitting says. I can't build this if you don't want me. So do I need to build a big park? Do I need to build more green space? Do I need to build a school? I will do whatever the hell I got to do to make this community better.
That's so smart to take that tactic because you don't want to go in there like, oh, we're going to build this. And then all the NIMBYs fucking come out. And then it's like, then there's lawsuits flying all over the place. You might as well just You know,
glad
Plus,
you brought-
it's a feedback loop that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah, man. And look, I'll leave you on one more thing. I'm sure you talked about this with Anthony, and he was probably here till 8 o'clock at night.
9
he talks.
9 o'clock.
We can end on this. So Anthony is doing more live local projects than any other attorney in the state. Got like 55, 60 of them, you know, because he's the best. And live local is a great policy, and you know it gives developers a tax incentive to create more attainable housing. You know, 40% of a project's got to be affordable. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, but the NIMBYs are pushing back hard in every community because they, you know, in some cases they're right. If you're building something that's out of scale, building a 40-story high-rise in a low-rise community, no, it shouldn't happen. They've changed a law to accommodate that. So now you have to build within scale. You know, but the idea that NIMBYs will not let developers come in and build workforce housing in a market rate or high-end community is just bullshit. I mean, these are the people that are servicing the community, the teachers, the cops, the health workers, the employees at the mall, and you don't want them living there because they're not, you know, you don't want development or you don't want a lower class of people. You know, it's fucking racist and it's bullshit. And look, to be fully transparent, I represent Bal Harbour Shops.
Matt has been on the podcast too. It's a whole lot of bullshit that's going on over there.
Who'd you have on here? Who?
Matt Lesenby?
Yeah. All right. So Matt's great.
Yeah.
So Matt's my client. So you already know the story. But Matt's family has owned Bal Harbour Shops for 50 years. It's the most profitable outdoor mall in the country, or top 5. He doesn't have to do what he's doing.
Yep.
You know, but he wants to. That project is in the business district of the village of Bal Harbour. He's got the scale. He's got the precedent. He's got hotels all around him. He's got condos. He wants to build 2, a market rate apartment tower, a workforce housing apartment tower, and a hotel in the business district of Bal Harbour.
But you got a bunch of single-family NIMBYs
and you got the fucking single-family NIMBYs who agreed to let their municipality tax them to raise money to litigate against Bal Harbour, and it's been tied up in litigation for 2 years. That is the worst kind of NIMBYism, because you're basically saying the people that are servicing that single-family home community where all the millionaires live, they don't want them them living.
It's going to be interesting to see how that one ends out. Because
well, you know what's going to end up? We're going to win.
Yeah,
we're going to shove it down their throats.
I hope so, man. Because
I don't see any other way. It's the law, right?
It's the law.
Yeah,
but they're slowing it
right.
down. And by the way, the only reason we're still in this fight because the NIMBY strategy is tied up in litigation. And finally, the developer doesn't want to spend the money to litigate it. Matthew's like, fuck it, I'm in this to win this, and he's spending big bucks.
I bet.
You know,
because the NIMBYs there have a lot of money.
There's
a lot of ammo on both sides.
There's a lot of ammo on both sides. So let's see who's the last man standing on this one.
Anyway, so to wrap it all up, we want to be involved. I'm also on the board of Lotus House, you know, the largest homeless shelter for women and children.
And you're on the board of the UM's
UMRPD, which, you know, is great, you know, and it's promoting that program, you know, greatest real estate program in the country, in the greatest market, you know. But Lotus House is special and dear to my heart because, you know, homelessness is a huge problem, you know. And I'll tie this back to real estate and then we can wrap it up. Big problem all over the country, right? And it's very easy to walk by the homeless person on the street and not give it a second thought, you know, and it shouldn't be politicized. These are fucking human beings that, you know, look, I grew up in a middle-class family. I'm sure you guys did too, you know, and if you didn't and you made it this far, good for you. But a lot of people grow up without 2 parents. They grow up in poverty. They are inches away from homelessness their entire life. And a lot of people end up homeless because of that. You know, and what Constance Collins and Marty Margulies have done. Constance was working for Starwood. I don't know if you know her story. No. She was a real estate badass working for Starwood, managing assets, you know, making well into the 7 figures. And she was managing an asset in Miami. And on the way to her office every day, she would pass a homeless person that was drinking and living and sleeping next to a water fountain, like a big water thing, you know. So finally she, talked to the lady and asked her what her story was. And, and she was so moved and heartbroken at how this lady got there. She ended up within months quitting her job at Starwood. She'd already made enough money. She was dating Marty Margulies at the time. You know who Marty Margulies is?
The name sounds really...
Big luxury hotel and condo developer. Probably one of the biggest in South Florida for 30 years. Also has one of the biggest art collections in the country. He's the owner of the Margulies Warehouse in Wynwood. So he's a billionaire or close to it. And they decide, Constance's like, look, I want to build a homeless shelter. And they end up buying like 5 or 6 parcels of land, 7 parcels of land in Overtown that had like little, 2-story projects. And she starts a homeless shelter. And 7-8 years later, by 2018, Marty funds the development of Lotus House, $30 million, brings on Bills and Sundberg to do the law work pro bono, architects, construction, GCs, everyone does it pro bono. They build Lotus House, for under $50 million. And Marty has said many times, my legacy is not a luxury developer. It's building a luxury homeless shelter. That homeless shelter is nicer than half the luxury multifamily or even condos.
Yeah, we went down there last year. Right? We went down there. It's really nice.
And he puts his art in there. So the whole mission with Lotus House is, they're not just housing people and giving them a bed. They're taking in women, the most vulnerable.
Yep.
The most vulnerable kind of homeless person there is. Why? Because women not only have to, many times they have kids, you got to feed your kid, you got to stay alive.
Yeah.
They're worried about getting raped, let alone getting food. They're hiding in bushes. They have nowhere to go. Lotus House not only takes them in, but what their whole focus is, how do I get them out of the homeless system? So their success rate is about 85% of getting women. They rehabilitate them. They give them their humanity back. They teach them. They give them a vocation. They teach them how to take care of themselves, how to take care of their kids. They give them health care. They give them education. They basically let them live there for anywhere from 6 months to a few years until they are self-sustainable. And when they leave Lotus House, they exit the homeless shelter system. They're not going from Lotus to another bed. Yeah. They're going to their own house with a job, and they're out. And the goal is to keep them out. That's the solution. And the only way to do it is to not only get public sector funds, which is under assault right now from the administration, but the private sector, guys like Marty. There are Marty Margulies in every city around the country. It takes a village. You got to have the private sector funding the services that are going to help these people get their lives back, And to me, as a human being, that's the solution. We can throw money at the problem and not think about it, and hey, out of sight, out of mind. But, everyone's worried about fucking Gaza. Let's worry about the homeless people that are dying on our street every day. 100%. Gaza's terrible, and I'm Jewish. I don't like to see that. I support Israel, but at the same time, you got a lot of people dead. And that's a whole political clusterfuck. But let's look at the political clusterfuck here in our own city, downtown Miami. You walk down Flagler, you got homeless people, and no one gives it a second thought, not my problem. Well, guess what? It is our problem. This is our city, it's our community. How do we help them? Lotus House is doing it, and it's a national model. And that in 2 months, they're opening up the second building right next door called Children's Village, which is so they're bringing in like 7 or 8 nonprofits to provide healthcare, job training, to service the people living in Lotus House. If they could put one of those in New York, in LA, in Chicago, we would start. So that's where we want to get to. Their mission is to end homelessness as we know it. And I'll leave you at that because you're real estate guys. But if you want to upgrade Overtown, right? You do a project like that because you're going to get people off the street. And you're going to start investing in the area, just like we're talking about with downtown and every other city in South Florida.
Love it.
So I'll end up with that, man.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tad, for joining us. This is awesome.
Yeah, dude,
Really
it was
fun.
really
We
great.
got done in 2.5 hours, man.
That's it. I think it's our longest podcast.
It's up there
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
is.
I
But
beat
it was a blast.
Anthony?
You beat Anthony.
Oh, shit.
That's something to be proud of, Tad.
I don't know if it's to be proud or not, but I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
All right,
Guys,
awesome,
thanks
dude.
for having me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys.
Yeah,
and,
seriously. Thanks for
you know,
knocking down a couple Peronis with us today, Tad.
I'll keep going, man.
All right.
We'll do it again.
Later.
Awesome. Cheers. This episode is brought to you by Built World Advisors. Yeah, that's us. We're not your typical commercial brokerage. We combine deep market knowledge with a media platform that actually connects to people doing deals, the developers, brokers, architects, and attorneys.
Let's not forget the investors, Ben. From warehouses in East Hialeah to off-market gems in Allapattah, we help you find value where others aren't looking. If you're tired of waiting for opportunities to land in your inbox, let's talk.
Built World Advisors, real estate for the people who get shit done. You can check us out at builtworldadvisors.com.